UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome to the show. It's approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And it's a sunny Monday morning, a brief respite between the rain. It's an absolute pleasure to have your company. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Lots to talk about, and with you live until 1. If you miss anything from the show, use your nagger. You go. You can do it yourself. You don't need me to do it. Go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing. I mean, I look at these stories, I'm like, how is it not April the 1st? Those 70 illegal migrants who've received thousands in compensation, and we're just going to total £500,000. Your and my money. Another £750,000 being spent on legal fees. That's also our money after their phones were seized, after they illegally entered the country. But apparently they've got a right to keep their phones and us not to take them, even though they've done it illegally. I do not know what is going on, but we've got to get out of any of these mad human rights courts or conventions that think that you can't do that. We're going to be talking about that. Also, the government announcing, their latest crackdown on the tech firms to protect children from illegal content online. I want to protect children, but how do we do that without allowing the government to basically restrict what we can and can't see as adults? I'm not sure after the last few years I trust them to make those decisions. I don't trust the tech companies either. So what do we do? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, the White House preparing to accept the Koran burner Hamid Kushkin as a refugee. He's got a case in court tomorrow in his appeal. And also has Labour lied about the Chagos deal? Because it looks very much like they've lied not just to MPs, not just to the press, but to Parliament about why we needed the Chagos deal. We'll be talking about that all coming up. So much more to talk about. It's a very busy news day. Smearing of journalists by the organisation that basically put Keir Starmer into the Labour leadership job. You name it, we're going to be talking about it. I do in particular want to hear from you about those 70 Channel boat migrants. They've won payouts totalling £500,000. That's just so far. There's a whole bunch more to come after their mobile phones were seized. It was a breach of their human rights, wasn't it? Because you're allowed to break into the country and then just, not have any duty of care to sort of provide information about how you managed to do it. What's your reaction to this? And do try and keep it clean. I don't know how you're going to, because I'm struggling right now. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls, of course, are charged at the national rate, and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Delighted to say, now a regular on a Monday morning, can't keep him away, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence.
Hello.
A very good morning to you.
I liked in the intro to the show it says that foes flee from you. Particularly impressive. I'm just sat here going, well,
you're
you
not
can't move me.
Friend of the show.
I've just been super glued to the seat. That's all. I desperately wish I could run.
People think that our guests just leave. No, honestly, all the guests on my show, we chain them in and they just have to sit quietly while other shows go on for the rest of the week. You've got to have rules. But we we bring you tea occasionally.
Occasionally when you remember, yeah.
Yeah, get over yourself. They're so demanding, these people. Anyway,
we have to have a laugh because everything else is so unbelievably stupid.
As I just said to Mark Dolan, I like to think every time there's a story about Channel migrants, some another story, you think this is the wake up call, everybody.
Yeah.
Apparently, rape, sexual assault, 12, 14-year-old girls. Apparently, no, that's not quite enough for the do-gooders and the so-called progressive left. No, they still want to have open borders. The absolute, blatant criminality that we are seeing from far too high a percentage. I'm not saying they're all doing it, other than the fact, of course, they've all broken the law because they're in the country illegally anyway. The ridiculous amounts of compensation people are getting, these ridiculous claims to have a right to a family life, even, for someone who's a paedophile, for goodness sake. But, his kids only get to see him under supervision because he's a danger to them. But, yeah, he's got a right to stay here. The nonsense about the chicken McNuggets, but they taste different in Albania, and this guy's son wouldn't be happy. Well, then tough. He doesn't have to go then, but you do. And we've seen all the stuff about the legal migrants who are here, they're living in asylum hotels, they're getting, taxis to medical appointments. They're working as, you know, Uber and Deliveroo and other delivery bike riders. The criminality, the absolute mickey taking on the grand scale that's going on. But now, more than 70 of them who had their mobile phones seized. This was between April and November 2020, in a specific period when it was a blanket, like they took the phones, pressured them to give them their passcodes so that they could... of course, they wouldn't want to give their date of birth, would they? Because it would reveal that they weren't 14, they were in fact 46. Another giveaway was the fact they were balding. But, you know, don't let facts get in the way of what a migrant's telling you. But basically, when they reached the UK, they've now won payouts totalling almost £500,000. It's feared that 1,300 migrants may apply for compensation after this court ruling. We've also got £735,000 paid by the Home Office fighting this, and we've only found that out because of a Freedom of Information probe. But this is a ruling in 2022 from the High Court that the policy was illegal, breached the European Convention on Human Rights, and at the time 1,300 migrants were told they could apply. If they all applied, we could have a bill of £8 million. Of course, ambulance chasing lawyers love in this, they get their share. But why on earth are we compensating people who've broken into our country for taking away their phones to get information about the people who smuggled them into the country? What's going on?
We've just reached a stage, ultimately, where... I mean, it's interesting you use the word ambulance chasers, because a large part of the nature of the British state and the British legal system is that it needs to continue to find reasons for it to exist and to expand.
Yeah.
That's always the nature of these things. You know, you get this every year, don't you, when, for instance, it's tax time, and everybody goes, well, all the stats say that if you had a simplified tax system, you'd bring in more and everybody would be a lot less stressed. Yeah. And you go, yeah, but then lots of accountants would find themselves out of work, and actually they're worth a lot to the economy.
And everyone wants an exception for them.
Yeah, and that's the insane thing, is that it just piles up layers upon layers, and that's how this sort of thing has got to the point where it is. It will have started as something well-meaning, something as, you know, police oversight or police overreach rather, and, you know, there needs to be a system in place to make sure that people can be fairly compensated if the police break the rules. But what about an exception for this set of circumstances and this? And it goes on and on and on until the point at which the system starts to heave and collapse in on itself. And all I can say about this, frustrating as it is, at some point there is going to be a hell of a backlash against all of this. Yeah. And all the same people who've been sat there going, oh, but what about the human rights and fascism and Nazism and all that sort of thing? They'll be sat there horrified, because the backlash will come and people will say, much as you did, well, tough, you know, this is, you know,
pushed
this is
it
taking
too
the
far.
something.
You took the mick too much, and this is what the result is going to be. But exactly, I mean, we've even got the Home Office apparently cannot say how many boat migrants have been caught pretending to be children since Labour came to power. So basically, you're lying about who you are. That should be an automatic, you're out. It's previously been claimed that 40% claiming to be children were found to be adults when challenged. We don't do the basic sort of DNA testing. I think it's bone testing, but it's totally non-invasive or dental checks. We don't do those in this country routinely, even though they're completely routinely used in all those lovely European countries that apparently we want to be so like. But I mean, we're talking thousands of people. We have absolutely seen, clearly, men in their 20s who've been put in schools, in classes, you know, with 16-year-olds. Oh, in no way a danger. I mean, it's genuinely... but some of these men, you look at them, they're big, hairy things. I mean, they're quite clearly grown men.
And when you look at the stats as well, the sort of the graph of what the demographics are of people who come, and you see there's no women almost at all of any age range at all, and they're mostly men. But
I think you'll find, if you check closely, a government minister pointed out to us about a year ago that there were mostly women and children coming on dinghies.
Yes, of course.
Is that true?
Mostly children, in fact, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's mostly women and children. Oh, no, it's mostly children. Oh, they're not children, we just don't check. There's a massive spike on the graphs, every single graph that says everybody's magically just under the age of 18. And we just don't happen to check, we just take their word for it. I mean, it is insane. But of course, there was, at one point, there was a plan, a trial, I don't know if they went ahead on it, they did for certain countries to say, right, well, we're going to process all women and children's applications first because they almost always get approved because they're children. And you think, so all you need to do, and you know this as a man, as a male migrant, because an NGO has probably told you, a taxpayer-funded body in Calais will have told you, say you're a child, because they will fast-track your application. We tried doing that at one point, and, you know, lo and behold, the results. Everybody says, yeah, mate, I'm 16.
But also, then when they were saying, oh, you have to prioritise or look after families if they've got kids. So basically, you create a market where they're basically selling children to people, and women are being raped to get pregnant to then be brought along as the wives. They literally create the market. It's not possible to underestimate the brutality and inhumanity of the people smugglers.
I mean, this is the thing. We talk about the horror of the Epstein files, which are currently sort of everywhere at the moment. But the way in which people are just prepared to overlook this, when it's a rich and powerful man doing something, those same people who are completely silent on this go to town, as they should go to town. But it's the double standard. It's the fact that equally, if not more horrific things are also happening on a massive scale.
It's just geography. That's all. That's the difference. It's just whether you're in a horrible, in horrible circumstances or on a paradise island. But the same abuse is happening. Here's an interesting story linked to this issue on migration, whether legal or illegal. Reform UK have issued a press release in the last half an hour or so, talking about their homelessness. It's their first official London policy. We've got Labour economists standing in 2028 against Sadiq Khan. We assume he's going to run again. But when you say not looking at local elections coming up in May, but their intention is to impose lengthy long-term residency requirements in every London council that they win, if they win in May. And basically, they will basically say you have to be resident. Currently, it's about 5-6 years, max 2, 3, 5, 6 years. But they haven't said exactly how many years it would be. But their idea is you have a long, other than for veterans or someone fleeing domestic violence, you would have, or been in care, you need to have lived somewhere for a very long time to even be allowed to put yourself on the homelessness list to be eligible for social housing. And the stats are really quite astonishing. Nearly 20% of social housing in London are occupied by foreign nationals. Around 19% of supported asylum seekers are accommodated in London. And over half the people who are registered homeless in England do live in the capital city. I mean, there is something going on. And again, there is this duty of care to people who are vulnerable because they haven't got, by definition, you haven't got a family member you could go and stay with. But that's not... You've got a country you could go back to. I mean, I just don't know why we give... under any circumstances.
It's just... Can anybody list me the countries that actually behave like this? If I found myself homeless in Beijing, would the Chinese government go, sure, we'll bend over backwards, we'll give you a house, we'll give you money, and we'll make sure that the catering is to your liking, so we'll specially make you fish and chips because you're British all the time, all that sort of thing, and we'll make sure that you get communications and all the clothes to your liking. We'll pay for all of this, and we'll compensate you for your time because you've been very badly let down by the system somewhere at some point. Obviously not. Nobody's going to do that. They wouldn't do it in the United States. They wouldn't do it in most European countries. Nope. It's only in this country where, again, that overreach because of the bleeding heart liberal do-gooder, where they assume everybody is always a good person unless you've earned money, in which case you're an evil person.
I don't care whether people are good people or bad people in that scenario. You're not British, and those council homes are for British people. I don't think that should be considered a controversial view, although it's bound to be. I mean, for supporting Jim Ratcliffe, I'm apparently a racist and a bigot too.
Did you see the billboard that people put up in Manchester saying that immigrants have done more than billionaires? And you think, well, for a start, Jim Ratcliffe has paid more in tax. He has paid more in tax than almost anybody alive today.
This is the thing. I've had all the comparisons. At another radio station 14 years ago, I asked a question because it was a debate at the time about Lewis Hamilton. Can he be considered a great British sporting hero if he lives in Monaco as a tax exile? They go, oh, well, this is evidence. He's black, Ratcliffe's white. Obviously, you have different rules for black and white. It's like, he basically left Britain the moment he started earning money. He went to Switzerland and then Monaco. He does pay tax here on some of his earnings here, but only because he can't get out of those. That's just something he has to do. But he's moved everything else abroad, as he's entitled to do. But the question was, are you a great British sporting hero if you're not actually contributing here or living here? Ratcliffe started a business here, huge amounts of tax here. He left this country at the age of 68. At the age of 68 to take his money abroad, which frankly we'd all do in his scenario as well.
Given how things have gone, it makes a lot of sense. Should I go and live somewhere where I pay much lower tax and it's warmer and nicer and less crime? Yeah, I think I'll go there. I don't have an issue with it. Many of these are the same people that were absolutely horrified by Brexit because it would make their ability to get to the continent that little bit more difficult. But
passport queues.
Exactly, and that's the thing, isn't it? You build businesses, you work your way up, you pay. He has paid. I'll say it again,
billions.
More tax than almost anybody else alive in this country. Maybe there are 3 or 4 more people that have paid more. Just because he doesn't pay tax now does not mean he has not contributed more than just about any migrant you could pick out of any set of circumstances.
I thought that even the last year's immigrant arrivals, my guess is that he has paid more than they have in his whole, in his time, than that whole year's
many
arrivals.
Times over, I suspect.
So, sorry, he's paid his dues. I think it's a different scenario. Let's talk about something else.
Sure.
Let's talk about Keir Starmer. He's currently with London Mayor Sadiq Khan, no booing and hissing at the back. They're at a community hub in London. Code for we're paying for it. That's what I hear. Community hub, we're paying for it. It's part of the government's announcement on action to improve online safety for children. This is the usual. I mean, just non-stop stuff about is there going to be action, won't there be action. He's got a lot of pressure from backbenchers who basically he's completely in the pocket of now. He's got no views on anything at all himself. He's got no backbone, no philosophy, no ideology, and they're saying, well, we need to act on online safety, and the idea is that having a 3-month consultation and doing it sometime isn't soon enough. We should do it now. Again, maybe we should see how it works in other countries first, like Australia. But again, I don't trust this lot, and I didn't trust the last lot in government to decide what is and what is not, quote, safe online, because the last lot were in cahoots, as this lot will quite happily be, in cahoots with social media companies who were basically censoring and banning people from social media who were spouting outrageous scientific facts, whether it's about the biological difference between men and women, or the threat of COVID, lockdown policy, masks. I don't trust these people to decide what isn't safe for me or my child, and that's my problem, because I do want kids to be safe. I also don't trust them when Keir Starmer, under a lot of pressure now as well, because basically when he got elected as the Labour leader, it was because he had the backing of an organisation called Labour Together. It's a Labour think tank, and it was previously run by one Morgan McSweeney, who went on to be his chief of staff. And quite a little while back, they paid a public affairs firm in America to investigate the backgrounds and motivations, they said, of journalists at the Sunday Times. As part of this, we're part of the same group here at Talk, researching the sources of its funding, and basically looking at whether, what their motivations were in terms of why they were writing stories about particular stories they were writing about Labour. They particularly smeared 2 journalists, Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York. They delved into Gabriel's Jewish background. There were some horrific smears about him, and basically very, very dodgy stuff. Doesn't surprise me at all. Does this surprise you, Ben?
It doesn't surprise me at all, because this is how Labour have operated ever since the holier-than-thou Alistair Campbell became in charge of all of their communications plans. This has always been how these people have operated. They've dragged the nature of politics and the media in this country very much kicking and screaming into the gutter. And then these are always the same people who get on their high horse and talk about the morality of people like Boris Johnson and what an evil and awful charlatan he was. And that's always been the hypocrisy, is that they will accuse others exactly of what it is that they are guilty of. Now look, politics is a dirty game. It's a rough and tumble kind of situation. You get into it, you decide to become a political journalist or a politician, you understand that there are going to be people out to get you. But the flip side of that is, when you get caught, you're going to take an absolute pasting. We've seen now that they've been caught, and it's funny, of course, that this has now come out after Mandelson and McSweeney are on the out, so there's fewer enforcers to keep the show on the road. They're going to keep taking punches to the mouth. Number 10.
But this group, they contributed £2 million. I mean, where's that come from to the Labour Party under Keir Starmer's leadership? But the reason why they wanted these journalists investigated, because the Sunday Times revealed that this organisation had failed to declare £730,000 of donations over a 3-year period. They got fined by the Electoral Commission. A perfectly legitimate investigation. Why did political journalists on a national newspaper want to investigate a major donation breach like that? Because that's literally their job. Yeah,
it's against the law. Yeah, I'm sorry, members of the Labour Party. I know that the law sucks when it gets in your way, but that's how it is. You tell us the whole time, got to obey the law, the judges, international law, this convention, that convention. It's all very sacred, very holy. Oh, but please, don't check our affairs. That would be the last thing that we want.
Absolutely fascinating, though, to see. I mean, the Tories, they live in Hollyoake, they're all criticising this. I'd like to point out the Conservative Party in its shadow ministers has one Neil O'Brien, the man who set up that website smearing me, other journalists, the likes of Carl Hennigan and Sunetra Gupta, top Oxford University professors and scientists and other medics and other MPs as well over our criticism of lockdown, mask policy and the general madness of what was going on. I mean, you can't criticise that when you allowed this man. I'm pretty sure it was Gove or Hancock who said, can you make trouble for these people? The smearing that went on online about, I mean, I'm a big girl, I can take it, but the smearing that went on of scientists was with proper solid credentials, asking reasonable questions, I think was genuine and outrage. And I've said to Neil O'Brien to his face, a Tory MP, I've said to him, I genuinely, I think you have no business being in Parliament because you're not a Democrat. If you don't believe in people being able to express their views and ask questions, you're not Democrat. I think he's genuinely, I think he's a danger to our country for doing that. But it's a bit rich. Tories, if that guy has still got your whip, if that guy hasn't, and I spoke to him personally, he will not apologise, he still doesn't think what he did is wrong, you haven't got a leg to stand on criticising Labour.
Well,
Sorry, not a leg.
This is one of the things about politics in general, though, and I'm afraid it is partly why people are falling out of love with it, if you can use that word. Well, this is the thing. Parliament is full of people who seem to think that politics is like, the thick of it. And they all seem to think that they're very clever. And they seem to think that nobody can spot what they're doing. And it's whenever you see the briefings coming out of Number 10 on either side, or this department or that, and when it all goes on, they must think that we're morons. But
they do. They absolutely think we're morons. But we're all sat there
going, you people shouldn't be anywhere near here, and it's only because of the decaying nature of the parties and how you rise in that party that you've got to where you are. And that is why we now have not just one, two insurgent parties, one on the left, one on the right, that are taking their lunch. That's why this has happened. It's that sort of behaviour.
Absolutely. Again, by the way, I feel we're going to be let down by them as well. I genuinely do. That's my...
Reform have no experience and are already bickering with each other, and the Greens are lunatics. Of course we're going to be let down by them.
They're dangerous lunatics. No, but
is there such a thing as a safe lunatic?
I've got an issue with people being inexperienced, because we had the experienced people in for a long time, and didn't they do a good job? Not. Let's just talk finally, before we go to a break, about the various demands for these proper probes into what the hell is in the Epstein files. We've actually got already police probes into the allegations against Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, over basically leaking documents, including there's now massive issues over Andrew, as was Prince Andrew, and leaks and meetings, and Epstein was clearly just, had him wound around his little finger. Again, Epstein wasn't mates with you because you're a great conversationalist, Andrew. It was basically, you had a title and he gave you access. I mean, it's the stuff we have seen, if it is true. I don't see how people ain't going to prison. I really don't. And the allegations about, young women and girls being flown in on the, the Lolita Express on Epstein's private jet to basically be handed to him. Now, Prince Andrew, he can deny everything. While you've paid off one of the girls accusing you of that, while you've refused to testify, you haven't been interviewed by the police. I'm sorry, I think we're entitled to say, you're not innocent until proven guilty at this moment, because you've gone out of your way. Everything you've said about this, we know now to be a lie so far. So I'm sorry, it doesn't look very good. But why is there not already a police investigation into these alleged crimes? On the basis that the police... Someone says, I think I overheard someone using wrong pronouns for someone on the street 3 days ago. Yeah. And they investigate that.
Well, to be fair, this is a very large and complex case, and that's a very easy thing. And if a policeman can only think in sort of very simple sentences, I can understand why the police officer might go, this is something that's worth my while, because I can focus on this. Whereas this requires more than 6 minutes worth of thought. So that's going to take a bit of time.
Make a fair point.
Yeah, and that's not to be mean to our police officers, our boys in blue.
They want to have things they can deal with quickly.
Yeah, nobody joins the police to become a pronoun officer, that sort of, and nobody does that. But still, those are the tasks to which they are set. The Epstein case, is very large, very convoluted. There is the issue of it being over multiple jurisdictions, multiple different forces wanting to get information and having to abide by their own laws. That's going to hamper the whole thing. I agree with you. I suspect some people will go to prison. But what I would also say, and this is because I'm a cynic, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as much as going to come out as perhaps has actually gone on. A lot of it is going to get buried. Absolutely. We know lots has been redacted and there's lots more to come out. And again, not everything is going to be in those files. And I'm still stunned by how freely these people were writing stuff. Why did they think they'd get away with it? Because they always had. 10:26 is the time. Your thoughts on everything we're talking about. There's so much more to come. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking, next half hour, just Claire Fox, just
general all-round good egg on everything. We're going to be talking to Tobias Ellwood, the former Defence Minister. I'm going to put to him the latest revelations that, well, as we already knew, there was absolutely no legal basis for us to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. So why are we doing it, and why were we lied to in Parliament? That's all coming up. First up, though, we're going to take your calls, 0344 499 1000, on anything and everything you want to talk about. But I think in particular, paying compensation to channel migrants who've broken into our country illegally, being compensated for having their mobiles taken from them and looked at by the authorities. Absolute mind-blowing stuff. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your call. So 0344 499 1000 is the number to have. You'll say James is in Staffordshire. James, you are among the many people on my board who want to have a say on this compensation for mobile phones being smuggled for migrants. Morning.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning. I've got a couple of questions for you, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so all of Europe's tied into the ECHR like we are. Now, Germany can deport people pretty much around the world, including Afghanistan.
Yep.
We can't. And then the other thing is that Denmark has a system that any asylum seeker or illegal economic migrant who comes into the country with any wealth of any sort, either gold, silver...
They confiscate it. Although they don't. Yeah. I understand they actually don't. That's one of those things on paper they don't actually do.
Well, I think there's been 3 or 4 that they have done, but I mean, the theory and the principle is there.
Yeah.
Now, if I got arrested by the police, and I used to work for the police, I would have my mobile phone taken off me. And lastly, there are exemptions in the Human Rights Act for national security.
Exactly. So why on earth? But that's the same reason, like why can't we deport people? Again, the Article 8 or whatever it is, it's quite clearly states. There's one paragraph saying your right to privacy in a family life, and the other one absolutely, the next paragraph absolutely gives all the exemptions, which would make it not even under question that you could deport people who committed crimes or were breaking into the country illegally. It's properly insane. But we know we have activist lawyers, activist judges, activist courts. They are part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that animal, that Afghan, over the 12-year-old girl.
Don't even, yeah.
I'm slightly mystified as to why we don't send him back to Afghanistan and go, well, rather than £120,000 it'll take us to keep him for God knows how long, we'll pay Afghanistan 10% of that, and I'm sure they'd be pretty happy at being paid 12 grand to look after that.
Except the people who rule Afghanistan now don't have an issue with 12-year-old girls being raped. That's the only problem.
No, I was just thinking they'd probably do it for the money.
Oh, yeah, there is that, yeah. Except I said we'd quite like him to be punished in the way that, let's face it, we would consider, let's go with natural justice. But there we are. James, thank you. I can feel the sort of, the weary sigh in your voice of what the hell is going on. Herbie is in Harrow. Hello, Herbie, what do you make of it all?
Good morning, Julie. What do I make of it all? Absolute damn madness. What other mad scheme we're going to come up with next?
Hello.
For God's sake, to take You know, these people are illegal. I blame these judges. It doesn't come out of their pocket. We pay them money to, you know, rule the country or the world, so to speak, and we get stuffed by them. Unbelievable. It's absolute sheer madness.
Well, my view is we pay judges to enforce the law. I don't know why the Home Office, this was under the Tories, is that they didn't actually make sure it was within the law. But again, it seems to me that it doesn't matter whether you have a law saying you can't do something. The judges and the tribunals and the lawyers will somehow manage to undermine it, because apparently the European Convention on Human Rights gives you the right to do anything you damn well please anywhere you want. That's as far as I can tell.
Yeah, but the problem is we're the ones who's picking up the tab every time. How much more? We haven't got the money, Julia, to pay these people. The floodgates are now going to open up, and how much is it going to cost us? This is absolutely sheer madness upon madness. It's just unbelievable. I could not believe such a scheme.
I could not agree with you more. But the thing, you know, the terrible thing is, doesn't even surprise us anymore. That's how mad it is. Herbie, thank you for that. 0344 499 1000 to have your say on that, on any of the topics we're talking about. Up next, going to talk to Baroness Claire Fox about all of this, including also the government's latest efforts on a social media ban as well. Oh, yeah, and the smearing of journalists by Labour Together. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spencer with me as well. I'm delighted to be joined by Baroness Claire Fox. She's an independent peer and the director of the Academy of Ideas. Good morning to you.
Morning.
And thank you so much for joining us. So much I want to get through. Let's get straight to it. Where are you? I'm sure you think, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I can't guess your answer. That more than 70 Channel boat migrants, illegal migrants to this country, who had their mobile phones seized and opened and searched basically for information about how they got there, the criminality, have won payouts now totalling almost £500,000, plus almost £750,000 spent on legal fees by the Home Office challenging this, because basically it was not legal for the authorities to seize their phones at the time.
If you were trying to make up a story that would turbocharge a populist revolt, it would be something like this. The fact that it's true, but it just doesn't even bear contemplating.
You don't have to make up stories about this topic ever.
No. The thing that's extraordinary is that obviously when the police are doing investigations, you know, they could raid someone's house and seize all their phones and their computers and so on. And they are, by the way, innocent until proven guilty. And say they got let off, they don't get compensation. They actually just get their equipment back. So this is an extraordinary story. The first point, of course, is, isn't it interesting that they all had those mobile phones? It seems weird to me that when the police seized the mobile phones, they never seem to find anything dodgy on them anyway, right? But what's now happened is they're seizing the mobile phones. These are people fleeing, apparently, from war and hardship and terrible terrors, and they've all got their mobile phones.
You would no, to be fair, I think you would need a mobile phone, because you have to contact with your people smuggler, for goodness sake. You know.
I know, but well, that's true, to organise your illegal entry.
We know
into the
they're
country.
not destitute. They paid £3,000 to get on the boat.
They're also making often TikTok videos of the exciting journey they're on.
Yeah.
So, this is a sort of sordid story before you get anywhere.
Yeah.
They then seize the mobile phones. There doesn't appear to be anything on those mobile phones that are ever used in police investigations. But then, anyway, they're then, as we know, compensated. By the way, the bill for this could be, and it's climbing, could be up to, at the moment, they're saying it could reach 8 million.
Yep. Because once everyone finds out. But what I don't understand is, A, how wasn't it illegal? Why was it illegal? And why didn't the Home Office know it was? The thing I don't get is, you say, if you were arrested right now, let's face it, it's only a matter of time, you and me, your phone would be taken. So why is it not, given that they've already committed a crime by entering the country illegally?
And would you believe, if you divide it up according to some of the newspapers, it's 6,500 per individual who's had their mobile phone. It's worth having your mobile phone seized if you get $6,500 back.
And this is the thing. There are people who have, severe injuries who don't get that sort of compensation. People who go to court who don't, have actual, physical injury to themselves or damage when someone has committed a crime against them. They get a few £100. They don't get £6,000. I mean, I have my back stolen. I'm allowed to apply for compensation. I'm like, are we kidding? If you're ever going to prosecute the guy, and then he's not going to have any money to pay me compensation. But I don't want the country to pay it to me.
I was recently at a meeting in which we heard from three people who were the victims of miscarriages of justice. One of them was inside for 38 years and totally innocent, exonerated. Another for 28 years, another for 13 years. Only one of those three were in line for financial compensation. The other two weren't. And the state locked them up and ruined their lives. And they were innocent. And now you hear this. It really is.
No, but even if
chillingly blood-curdling.
Even if you do get compensation when you've been in prison for something you didn't commit, you still have to pay for your room and board for the years you're in prison, which is genuinely an abomination of justice. But there we are. But, if they were illegal migrants, they'd probably be fine. I say you can't make up these stories because they are so ludicrous, and yet it's what's going on. This one, again, I always have to double check these ones because I'm like, this must be something made up. No, it's not. A Filipino migrant. Because, again, Philippines, terrible place to live. I mean, God, we go on holiday there, don't we? We would like to. A migrant Filipino, a man, received sex change treatment on the NHS worth tens of thousands of pounds while applying to remain in the UK. He entered Britain. I love this copy. He entered Britain as a man several years ago, but underwent the health service-backed gender reassignment procedure to become a woman. He didn't become a woman. He was still a man. He just had some surgery. But he got NHS-free treatment for gender reassignment, and after the surgery, he changed his pronouns and all of that. But he got it even though I mean, he wasn't even a British citizen. He didn't have the right to stay in the UK. I literally don't understand on what basis he's eligible for this treatment, and I don't understand particularly why people are waiting. I've got a couple of relatives who just have to pay, £10,000 plus, for hip operations and knee operations, having contributed all their lives in taxes. But someone who's just arrived here, who's got no right to be here at that point, and is getting tens of thousands of pounds worth of non-essential surgery, all paid for by us. This is an abomination.
So that's the point. Gender reassignment for adults is non-essential surgery. It's already ambivalent as to whether the NHS should be prioritising it anyway. To give that to somebody who has not been given leave to remain, as you say, a Filipino migrant who's actually not necessarily got any right to be in the country is, as you say, you couldn't make it up. But one thing to note was this was done by Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, 40% of their patients miss the treatment target that's been set by the government. So how on earth did they make, because this is not simple surgery, this is complicated surgery. So imagine the amount of time that consultants and doctors and nurses had to spend on that individual to actually adhere to their whim rather than a serious medical operation. Now, if I'd heard that this person had, a brain tumour and was dying, and so on.
We're a civilised country.
You would think that this was a humane action. In fact, this was part of a politicised intervention by the NHS, that they would say that this zoomed up the list of important operations that should happen in that hospital.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
was genuinely shocked to read it.
Some of the treatment took place there, but then the actual treatments was in a private hospital, but again paid for by us. But again, that private hospital could have been dealing with a lot of the NHS treatments that were also prioritised.
Exactly.
It's the same
All I'm
difference.
saying is it was organised by an NHS hospital.
Still paying for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is mind-blowing, isn't it? Again, it's all these stories that very much will involve migrants. This is very interesting. The Trump administration is in talks to basically offer refugee status to Hamit Kuşkan. He is a Turkish man who fled he fled Turkey because he was an apostate. You know, he was no longer a Muslim. He burnt a Koran while he was a refugee here in the UK. He burnt a Koran as he is entitled to do outside the Turkish embassy. It wasn't outside a mosque. He wasn't causing. He was attacked in the most outrageous way. It's on video by a man who went to go and get a knife to stab him, who didn't even face any prison time, and attempted to stab him. He basically is accused of, to all intents and purposes, blasphemy. We've got the CPS contesting decision at court hearing in the High Court tomorrow, basically for him to basically. It's complicated. He was able to overturn his conviction for a religiously aggravated public order offence after he burnt the Quran outside the Turkish embassy. The CPS is using our resources to challenge that in the High Court tomorrow. And basically, if he loses that case and therefore effectively will have been found to be guilty of committing a blasphemous crime, even though of course we don't have that law in this country, the Americans have said, we will take you as a refugee from Britain. I mean, this is a source of national disgrace, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a stunt by the US, by the United States, but, you can't blame them for playing that stunt and making the point once more that there's a free speech problem in the UK, because there is. And I think it is genuinely a shocking story that, first of all, the CPS ever charged him for this. Now, I'd just like to point out that burning a Quran is not the way I would conduct politics.
I'm with you.
Particularly aggravating, but it is not illegal. But anyway, the CPS chose to charge him. They changed the charges, as you say, and actually in court, the judge initially said a very sensible thing, which is it might be unpleasant, it might be offensive, it might be all of these things, but it's not against the law. And now the CPS are trying to overturn that innocent verdict. So the CPS has something to answer for. And genuinely, it's shocking that the man who stabbed him, viciously stabbed him
on camera,
doing this on camera, so we were all able to witness it, did not get sent to prison. Yeah. So when people feel that there's a two-tiered justice system, they've got a point. And it's possibly the case that he will now be found guilty. But why are the CPS, this is the Crown Prosecution Service, why are they pursuing this in a vindictive way when actually they seem to be trying to get a blasphemy law on the
by
books?
the back door? The Prime Minister was asked about this, wasn't he, by a backbench MP a little while back in PMQs, and he didn't say categorically, we will not have a blasphemy law in this country. But we all know it's only going to be a blasphemy law for one religion. Even in the first court case, which Hamit Kuşkan lost. The judge actually said that one of the arguments for arguing why he'd committed a crime was because it had provoked an aggressive attack from someone. So somehow the man coming out of the Turkish embassy with a knife to stab him was proof that he had committed a crime by provoking the man with the knife. That is a genuinely terrifying thing for a judge to have said, not a prosecutor, a judge.
Well, that's exactly right, because I think what we get here is the excuse that the police are using fairly regularly. They used it in Birmingham in relation to the Tel Aviv fans, which is we can't let them in because they will lead to an attack by local people. That's why they actually banned that march recently, that slightly cranky Christian march organised by UKIP through Tower Hamlets. The police said it will lead to violence in the local community, so we're going to ban the march. So in this instance, we have a situation in which somebody is said to do something provocative, and because they could then aggravate someone to be violent and stab them, they are the criminal.
Yeah,
and this is happening at the very same time that this government is going to bring in hostility to Muslims, to Islam guidance. You just know that this is going to create this atmosphere of you can't say that.
Absolutely.
You can't actually provoke anyone if they happen to be a Muslim. Not something, by the way, that most Muslims want.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just get, I want to get you just really, really briefly, because I'm way over time, but this story about the Labour Together, the think tank, which basically was led by Morgan McSweeney, the former chief of staff until last weekend of the Prime Minister, that they had basically tried to smear, hired an American company to smear two Sunday Times journalists and look into their background. The smears, involved, the fact that one of the journalists was Jewish, etc. Even though what they'd done was simply write a story exposing Labour Together for not declaring all of their donations. What do you make of that? Just very briefly.
Very dirty tricks here. Labour Together were accused by the journalists who did a good investigative job of actually messing around and getting far too much in by way of donations to the Labour Party. And the response of Labour Together, who were the people accused of this, was to get an American PR company to investigate and set up a dodgy dossier about them using all that personal information. Yep. The significant thing, of course, is that one of the Labour Together guys, Josh Simons, an MP, is now a junior minister from the Cabinet Office. And what's the government's response to this? To set up an investigation by the Cabinet Office into this. It should be said that when they got this dossier, Josh Simons, who's quite a good bloke, actually, nice young Labour MP, he said, they went too far in their investigation. Why did they actually pay them in the first place? But secondly, if they went too far, he shared it with cabinet ministers and around the Labour Party, and none of them whistle-blew this. None of them said it was disgusting. It's only now that it's come out that they've all started.
Exactly. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Covered so much ground there. Baroness Claire Fawkes. It's just coming up to 10:50. Up next, we're going to talk about defence spending and the Chagos Islands. Were we lied to? Yes, of course we were. We'll talk to Tobias Elwood up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:52 is the time. Let's go straight to our next guest. Let's talk, about our defences and indeed Chagos Islands as well, as much as they form a part of our defence. Tobias Elwood joins us, former Conservative MP, of course, now former Defence and Foreign Minister, of course. Very good morning to you, Tobias.
Good to see you.
You're in a lovely, lovely sunny part of the country, but you are also somewhere rather cold by the looks of you. Hope you can make it through to 11. Let's talk about defence spending, because we've had the Munich Security Conference, and I know you were attending that, and lots of talk about our need for Europe to kind of step up and look after our defence. The Prime Minister has said he's looking at increasing our defence spending. He's in some comments this morning. Do you think that we are going to actually see a ramping up of our defence spending?
Well, goodness me, how many times have you and I talked about, the growing threats that we face, the need to invest more in our defence, the fact that our world's becoming more dangerous, and the defence budget hasn't really changed. There was a big commitment made a year ago to say, yes, let's increase defence spending to 3.5% of our GDP, but that doesn't kick in until 2035. And boy, the world is going to look very different by then. The next war may have come and gone by then. So this is good news, but it's very late in the day. It takes more than 5 years to build a tank. It takes more than 5 years to procure a ship, and the same length of time or more for a jet. And we're short of all three.
Hold on a minute. Okay, I accept there's something in peacetime, but we know in wartime it doesn't take that long. And if we know that we are in dangerous territory, we're equivalent of 1938 territory, could we not manage to do that? I mean, I don't know, if we had cheap energy and we had our own steel plants, we could manage to do it ourselves, couldn't we?
Yeah, but you make the point. We haven't got that cheap energy. We don't have those steel plants. We don't have the docks to do so. And the complexities of those high-level platforms mean they do take longer to procure. You are right. Things do speed up, partly because of the decision-making in a period of war. But do we want to go to that point until we invest? We know storm clouds are gathering. Therefore, we need to prepare today. And as I say, in all three cases, land, air, and sea, we are overstretched. We are on a peacetime budget still and a peacetime footing, and we need to prepare. That itself is its own resilience and deterrence.
Yeah.
So it's good news, but it's not come fast enough.
I don't want us to wait until the war. I want us to act as if we are already at war and do what we need to do. And there's been years of austerity, and again, there are reasons for that, but nevertheless, we are where we are, and we haven't got enough money being spent. But we are looking at an extra, if we were going to go from the 2.3 currently to the 2.5 by 2030, or in the next couple of years, and then up to the 3% of GDP. Again, this is still way less than Russia or China or the other countries are spending. By 2030, we are looking at an extra 14 billion quid, and that's got to come from somewhere.
It does indeed, and it's become a political football. You are right that we need to spend more in defence. I think you and I know the details because we bothered to look at it and we understand it. If those details were shared by governments with the British people, there'd be more incentive to say, yes, I see why we need to spend more on defence, let's do it. But the reason why is that, understandably, the world does feel more dangerous, but life continues on here.
Yeah.
The war seems a long way away. We don't need to spend it. Let's focus on education, on schooling and so forth.
Yeah.
That's understood. But those times have changed. War is coming our way. And as I say, a frank conversation with the British people, we could indeed get a green light for that defence spending increase. Well, I would like to see Labour and Conservative show some maturity, come together to say, let's take this away from being a political football.
Absolutely.
Let's say, for example, increase income tax by 1%. I think that's the size of the cost of a cappuccino a day. That would be what it would cost all of us to make sure we are better prepared. This is 1937 again for what's actually coming over the hill.
Yeah, no, exactly. I do think they should come together. But by the way, we've got a Green Party on the rise right now. I think we should even leave NATO. Wouldn't it be better for us to defend ourselves if we didn't hand over one of our strategic bases, Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands, to effectively the control of the Mauritians, who've got no legal claim to it? And have we or have we not been lied to? Robert Midgley, who's been looking into this, he's a journalist, he's pointed out, and Daniel Hannon is someone who's campaigned on this issue as well, that we have been lied to, both in the media but also in Parliament, that we were told there was a legal threat that we wouldn't be able to carry on operating the Diego Garcia base unless we handed over to Mauritius the actual islands of the Chagos Islands and then leased them back. This is apparently completely and utterly untrue, and in written answers, freedom of information answers and ministerial questions, Labour ministers, they claim the base was under threat from what's called ITLOS, and this is the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. But under Article 298 of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, they can claim a military exemption. So it is simply not true that that base was under threat. It is simply not true. They told the American public this. They told the British public this. They told the British Parliament this. This is a lie, and we have no reason to hand over the Chagos Islands. What do you say to that?
Well, there's an awful lot of detail. This has become a political
We've only got
football.
a minute. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
All right. Well, Donald Trump has seen the details, and he recognises that this is a difficult situation. It's the best deal that can be there. We're going halves on this base, by the way, with the Americans. They pay $100 million a year.
Doesn't matter. We don't need to give it away. There's no reason. There's no legal reason for those islands to go to
We're not going to do it in a minute. The way we gained the island in the first place.
The legal basis for that doesn't exist. So why are we doing it at all? You've always defended it. I don't understand why we don't. It's not. We may have got a good deal for the deal. We didn't need to do a deal. They're ours. Full stop. Go away. That's the answer.
Because how we got them. That's the big question. We went to Mauritius after the Napoleonic Wars, took what France had and said it's our own. We then looked at the map. Yeah. Well, let me finish. We looked at the map and saw, there's some islands there as well. And they were the Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia. It wasn't until the 1960s that we then split them apart and said Mauritius and Diego Garcia are separated. That's the legal issue that's run into the international courts.
It's a recommendation from a court. No, I know there's no legal requirement for us whatsoever to hand over that base or hand over the Chagos Islands at all. There is no legal basis for it. So why are we doing it?
Because then let's test that with the Americans. But you've got Donald Trump saying this is the deal that we've ended up with. They've been sat next to us working this deal out from the very, very start. So if there is a better deal to be had, by all means, let's pursue it.
The deal is they're ours. Sod off, Mauritius, ain't going to happen. That's the answer, Tobias. I'm so sorry it's so short. Go and get somewhere warm. Former Defence and Foreign Minister. I promise we'll have more time next time. I promise you. Also promise to get Benedict Spence to give his tuppence to us on this. I know you always want to talk about these international affairs. Lots more to talk about, including other things going on the seas, and that's the migrants arriving, having their mobile phones taken, and then getting £6,000 each compensation for having them taken away. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. You are, and we are the home of common sense. I mean, to be fair, you're a big part of the show, and you are also the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining me. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you, as always, for sticking with us. I'm with you live until 1. If you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about those more than 70 illegal migrants who received compensation, 6,000 on average, so 6,000 quid for having their phone seized. If you get your phone stolen, you don't get your £6,000 compensation. How do you get it for someone's thieves? I literally can't understand for the life of me why any court thinks someone arriving in the country illegally, clearly using their mobile phone as part of committing the crime, because that's contact with the people smuggler, etc. I do not understand on what basis they can possibly claim it was wrong to seize their phones, but they're insane and they are basically part of the problem, so I don't think we should be surprised. Also going to be talking about the government announcing this crackdown on tech firms to protect, they say, children from illegal content online. I think we all want children protected from illegal content online. Very concerned about children on sort of sitting doom scrolling on social media for hours and hours and hours on end, but I don't trust the tech companies and I don't trust the governments either to do this in a way that will actually keep our kids safe. Whenever government now, ever since 2020, has told me let's try and be safe, I'm like, yeah, safe or controlled, which is it? Anyway, also going to be talking about Hamid Koshkan, the Quran burner, and if he loses his case tomorrow as the CPS challenge in the High Court, his basically ability to, well, he overturned his conviction after he burnt a Quran. If he loses that, the White House apparently is prepared to basically offer him refugee status. Imagine people getting refugee status from the UK because they haven't got freedom of expression here. Absolutely shocking. Loads more to come. Loads more to talk about, and it's all frankly utterly maddening. It really is. Benedict Spence is joining me throughout the show for a chat on all the big topics. Conservative commentator. Good morning. Good morning. You. Didn't get a chance. We were so busy with topics in the last half hour. When we have a guest on, I was saying I want to get as many things in, and we didn't get a chance to get to you on a couple of those, so we'll come to those in a few moments. Lots more coming from you as well. Do get on the phone, 0344 499 1000, in particular about these boat migrants getting compensation for having their phones seized, but anything else you want to talk about, the Chagos Islands, Keir Starmer's smearing of journalists, whatever you want to talk about, get in touch. As I say, 0344 499 1000 is the number. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost one standard network rate message, but you knew that bit already. Benedict, let's just start briefly with this conversation about these boat migrants. £500,000 in total compensation to 70 plus so far, could end up being many more. It's over a period of about 6 months when a load of people came in, they had their phones stolen, and at that time it wasn't legal apparently to take their phones. I don't understand why, because if you're arrested in this country, the police take your sodding phone off you.
Honestly, it's insane that we are paying that much. Even if you were going to compensate somebody for having their... Yeah, what's actually the damage?
Yeah, who decides? Yeah, this is how much it's worth.
Has it cost them money-making opportunities whilst they didn't have their phone?
They might have missed some delivery
who knows?
orders.
Yeah, the handler's saying, listen, you need to be in this place by this time to start working in the black economy, where nothing is scrutinised anyway, and maybe a judge is out there going, oh, well, yeah, that's cost them.
Couldn't get my car washed.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, the amounts of money, and it's the gateway to other people then going, oh, well, there's another opportunity to claim money, so many other people may try and do it.
British lawyers, what really bugs me is, I really approve of these lawyers who are keeping, the ones who are battling for people who are imprisoned abroad and doing these amazing pro bono jobs and things, and really helping. These guys ain't pro bono, they're doing it, they're getting paid. We pay an absolute fortune in legal aid to pay for these people, or to charities who then, and NGOs from the government, who then pay for this, for these people to then sue this country. I'm sorry.
It's the mission creep of the so-called human rights lawyer, which there's no such thing as a human rights lawyer because all law pertains to human rights, and it's simply a way of going, look at me, aren't I special, aren't I clever, I work at a very high-profile chambers, and I get to do that sort of thing that, to be, you say it's a good thing, but I do often wonder, actually, what is the point of this?
There are some cases
when did Britain's legal system become the world's sort of legal system?
But I don't understand why you wanted to be a lawyer and you wanted to help people, and you wanted to help people who've got slum landlords, and you're going to, there are people who've been in prison on falsely, and you're going to fight for them. All credit. We love these people. You're doing a great job. If you're a lawyer and you're thinking, I'm going to use my time to get some horrible illegal migrant who's come to this country, broken into this country, paid a people smuggler as part of that whole organised criminal gang network. If you're a customer of that, same as if you're buying cocaine, you're part of the drugs organised criminal network. They don't exist without you buying them, and then they come here, and then their phone is taken to be analysed, basically to see who the hell have you been contacting, getting numbers and the like. I don't know if I'm guessing the police and the authorities didn't act on any information because PC Plot often doesn't. But the idea that you're thinking that person's a victim, I should work on a legal campaign to get them compensation. What is going through your mind? Are you sleeping at night at that point? I've done a great job today. The British taxpayers paid even more for these scroats.
Two things. We do know that there are an awful lot of people who do genuinely see the world through this particular prism of thinking that Britain owes something to absolutely everybody. But that then feeds into the second thing, which includes them, which is actually, I don't believe that the average person who becomes a lawyer does it out of the goodness of their heart. Same way that doctors do not in fact become doctors because they just love helping people. They do it because it's paid well.
I've given years of public service.
And we need to,
we have that about civil servants as well.
And we have this, of course, with the NHS. Oh, God bless the NHS. They don't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They do it because it's skills that can be replicated anywhere across the world, and they get paid a lot of money, and they get prestige from it.
It's an interesting
That's what motivates it. And it's the same. I'm sorry. Every single human rights lawyer does it because it makes themselves feel good. They don't, in fact, go into it because they desperately want to help people. You look at the number of human rights lawyers who have magically become politicians, and you start there going, oh, you did it to help people. Did you not to advance your own career? Sure. Come on. That's not what
exactly. No, it's just painful. And then we've got the story of the migrant who got tens of thousands of pounds worth of Filipino. Again, all the articles from he's a man, he became a woman. He didn't. He's still a man. He's just had surgery to take his tonsure off. He's just a man without a tonsure. That's all you are. But he didn't. He was applying for leave to stay in the country, so he wasn't a British citizen. He's not got leave to stay. I don't. What are we? The sex change capital of the world? We're just going to pay. We have scarce NHS resources. There are people who don't get cancer treatment because the NICE decides it's too expensive, to keep these people alive. People who are desperately, fighting infertility and can't get IVF on the NHS. But no, let's let some foreign bloke wander into the country and then we'll spend tens of thousands of pounds on him having sex change surgery. This is, it's not just insane. It's not just bad value for money. It's immoral. It's immoral.
Yeah, every penny that goes on this sort of thing, or on puberty blockers for children, all this sort of thing, is money that could have gone towards saving somebody dying from something that they had no say over.
Could be old-fashioned.
And could have, changed not just that person's life, so many other people's lives.
Spend that money on more regular, mammograms or tests for prostate cancer.
Or that sort of thing. Yeah, because to be honest, even though you've had your todger cut off, you're going to need that down the line.
No,
sorry, guys.
No, he's a woman now.
Yes, okay, ma'am, you have a very developed prostate cancer. That's unfortunate, and we can't afford to treat it because we spent all the money having your reassignment surgery or whatever we call it. Yeah, honestly, this is money that it goes to no benefit at all, because very often what they say is, of course, well, it is important because of my mental health. It doesn't solve the mental health problems. No, it only exacerbates them.
I'm really not sure that I think that we should be giving surgery to anybody, even British people.
Yeah, I
really, certainly not under 18s.
Listen, if you want to pay for it yourself, if you want to pay to have your anatomy
if you want to mutilate your own body, if you can find a doctor to do it, you're over 18, fill your boots.
Yeah, but good luck finding a job that pays that well in this country these days.
Yeah, I don't know. Fill your boots with your own ex-todger. Whatever you want to do, I don't care.
But I don't see.
I really don't see why I should be paying for any of this stuff. I'm sorry. Again, when no one is dying from preventable diseases, when everyone can get the treatments they need, then we'll do some of those optional things.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no. Let's talk about the social media ban. I don't think a week goes by when I don't have this on my news list. The Prime Minister out and about today. By the way, he didn't know anything about those allegations that Labour Together, the think tank that put £2 million towards his party, but also basically was led by his former Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney, who now had to go. But they gave a load of money. They basically campaigned to create. They did a load of research into sort of what did Labour Party members want? And then they created a candidate in Keir Starmer who said everything they wanted, and he got elected. And it turned out he didn't believe in anything that he'd said at all. And they did the same for the general election in 24 as well, because he's a completely empty vessel. But basically, they paid for an investigation into journalists at the Sunday Times, who work in this building with us, because they did an investigation into Labour Together because they hadn't paid all their they hadn't declared all their donations. I mean, so literally journalists doing exactly their job, and they basically smeared them. They suggested one of them, Gabriel Progran, that he linked to the Russians and just absolutely outrageous stuff. They seem to be very concerned with the fact that he was Jewish. Now, I'm sorry, this is really dodgy. Prime Minister has said he didn't know anything But the Cabinet Office will be establishing the facts.
I was going to say, I believe in many cases that is literally true when it comes to Keir Starmer. But it's... honestly, the way that these people operate, and they think that they're so clever and that they're using the dark arts to great effect. And we saw this actually, of course, with the whole cult of Peter Mandelson. The part of the reason why he was tolerated was because Peter's ever so clever and he's so good at getting this stuff done. And then you look around at the state of the country and you go, wow, all of these brain cells, all 17 brain cells that you could cobble between you for these dark arts. Yeah. Couldn't you have put it to slightly better use doing other things? Maybe not breaking donation laws or anything like that. Maybe then a journalist wouldn't have had to delve into it or wouldn't have found anything. Are you really that hard up against it that you needed this amount of money? Oh, you're all so clever though, and it's all like House of Cards, but that's the problem. It's like a game. They think it's a game. They think, and this is the worst thing about all of this, because they do all come from a certain subset in society. They went to the same universities. I won't even say the same schools because we're beyond that. It is very much about what university these people went to, and they do treat it as if they are still at university. There is an infantilism and a prolonged adolescence about people in British politics and, to a degree, parts of the media, and the rest of the country just has to get on with it. And is then sat there going, why is my economy not working?
You wait till the Greens are in charge.
Oh, well, they didn't go to university.
That's not even university. That's sixth form politics. That's sixth form stuff.
Technical college.
Or whatever. I've never got to grips with. Even my daughter was in sixth form. I still. What year are you? Oh my God, I'm year 12 or year 12. Which one's that again? Is that low or upper sixth? That'll never fly with me. But coming back to the social media ban, because maybe you should have looked on social media, you might have known what was going on. Children could be banned from using social media as soon as this year, under powers announced by the Prime Minister. Basically, apparently this is all about, he's got a load of Labour backbenchers saying, why are you dithering? Why are you announcing? And I don't think it even starts till next month, this 3-month consultation on whether or not we should introduce curbs on the use of social media. But so the measures would include a ban on its use by under-16s, the introduction of phone curfews or restricting addictive design features like infinite scrolling. They're also considering limiting children's interactions with AI chatbots, blocking them from virtual private networks, VPNs, which people are basically using to get around a lot of the bans on things like porn. And they say it's not a question of whether we take further action, but what that action is, a government source has said. Now, there's big fines or a UK ban for AI chatbots that put children at risk. Now, we've had chatbots that are talking people into suicide, into self-harm, and like chatbots, I'm sorry, they're really, really dodgy. I had a chatbot the other day and I looked someone up and it said to me this person had a criminal record and had actually gone to prison for 3 years. I then tell me more about this person and their prison sentence. And they said, no, it was somebody else who went to prison. Not even someone with the same name, but someone who'd vaguely linked to that person. Now, I don't know how AI and Grok in particular. I don't know how it's so sophisticated if it gets stuff like that wrong, because that's just like a look through the facts. And I use it quite a lot now to check things quickly, but I tend to double check everything because I just can't trust it. But we know do we know? I think we do. I think we know that kids of anyone of any age, but certainly under 16s, we know their brains are still developing. We know that time spent looking at their phone, scrolling through stupid videos on YouTube, if people doing pranks, goodness knows what, getting likes, girls for basically, showing them this amazing way that women can show both their bums and their breasts at the same time. It's, all credit to them and the contortions they can do, but they do manage it. Boys, playing video games and stuff. Yeah, yes. I don't know, but the stuff they're doing online is unhealthy. Every moment they spend online is a moment they're not spending face-to-face with another human being, reading their signals, being social, playing sport, but playing cards and having a laugh. I've always said I'd rather they were in the pub getting drunk and having a laugh. That's more normal behaviour. There's something that needs to be done. Is the answer getting the social media companies to do something about it? Is it the parents? Is it the government? Is it all three? What do you think?
I am going to play devil's advocate very slightly here, because whilst I take your point on the dangers of exposing children whilst their brains are still developing to this sort of stuff, is it not equally as dangerous? I think it is, that we also expose people in later life as their brains decay to this sort of stuff. And this might sound a little bit rude.
No, we're busy doing Sudokus.
I have to deal with so many people online who are in their 60s and over, who are absolutely convinced of all sorts of insane political ideas, and very often they have FBP or a European flag or something in their title or something, but you would not believe the amount of nonsense that older people fall for hook, line and sinker. And I tell you what, AI and videos and things like that and deepfakes are going to come for them so much harder than they're going to come for the kids. So if you're listening to that and you're in that demographic, it is equally as important that you go outside.
I think people of all ages, but
what I'm going to say is right here,
there are rights you get at the age of 18. By the way, not the age of 16, Labour. I would say rights you get at the age of 18 as an adult, which are different from those that you have.
That was sort of part of the point, is that Labour seems to think that at 16 you are smart enough to be able to vote, but you can't be trusted to see with your own lying eyes things that are on the internet. Let's be clear here. Yes, social media platforms host all sorts of things that are unseemly, untoward, in some cases illegal. So do the actual phones themselves. This is the vector by which you get it. They're not looking at it at a desktop or anything like that. They get access to these things through their phones, and it doesn't matter if you ban certain platforms. There are ways around this. I'm telling you right now, talk about potentially banning VPNs, which is something that they have floated. That is impossible. It's not going to happen. There is no... The very
almost
nature
by definition.
the very nature of a VPN makes it incredibly difficult for you to identify and to intercede this. The children are smarter than you, adults in the room. They are better at this than you. They've been brought up on this sort of thing. If you would like to stop them accessing this sort of thing as children, take away their phones. You have the power to do... And I'm sorry. People are now going to say, oh, you don't know how difficult it is raising a kid. I'm sorry. You listening at home, managed without a phone. You managed to go through your life.
No, that's not fair.
I don't care if it's not fair.
There were no mobile phones until I was about late 20s. That's not the point.
If you care that much, take the phone away.
A, you've never been a parent, and B,
that's the most nonsense response. You've never been a parent. I've never been black. I've never been disabled. Does that mean I can't empathise? It's nonsense.
I'm a 1950s strict parent, trust me. Luckily, we didn't have any issues over this with our child, but I certainly had new kids that did have those issues. And again, I don't understand a parent going, my child just spends the whole time doom scrolling, or my child's looking at all these anorexia sites. I mean, at that point, take your phone away, end of, nothing to discuss. But when everyone else has got the phones and all social events are arranged through the phones and everything, then you need to talk about, again, a lot of it, I think parents need to talk to other parents. A lot of parents, they don't know what their kids are doing. Yes, they should, but they don't. And they're not being protected. Now, we're not going to protect all kids. There are going to be parents who give their kids cigarettes at 10. We're not going to protect all kids. But do we trust that the government is the body that can decide what kids can see, what can't see? I mean, certainly I don't want kids shouldn't, the moment they walk into their school, that phone goes in a locked locker or wherever it is and should not be seen again. And anyone who argues any different, I think, is properly mad.
But this is the problem, though. They've already been exposed to this, which is the dopamine receptor. It's a bit like saying you can only take heroin between the hours of 6 and 8. But apart from that, you're not allowed to. That's not how it works.
I don't understand a parent saying, I can't stop my kid being on their phone all evening until 2 in the morning. Yeah, you can.
So you agree? Take away the phone.
But lots of parents don't do that, and a lot of children are being damaged.
Well, then your children will be addled. I'm sorry. It's the same as giving your children the cigarettes.
The trouble is, we're going to have to deal with all these people who, by the way, totally unemployable.
You do not need the government to step in on this. If you would like your children to succeede in life, really simple, take the phones away, give them the phones access.
You have an hour a day.
Later, as they get older, from when they get to the age of about 15 or 16, fine.
Because a lot of parents do that with video games now. Their kids, you can play. When you've done your homework, you can have an hour of video gaming. That's all you're allowed.
That's the sort of thing that many of my generation.
But what about the social media companies? Again, the bosses of whom, by the way, send their kids to schools where they don't have access to phones and things like that.
That's the point. They don't give them access.
But they don't, because they know it's. But should it be legal? I mean, should it be legal to have algorithms? I'd say for adults as well as children, which are deliberately addictive and deliberately sending you to harmful stuff.
Almost everything is addictive. This is the thing. Food is addictive. All sorts of things are addictive. It's about having that ability to recognise this is bad, this is good. If you allow
but
the
government... But we have limits on gambling and alcohol.
Does that mean that there are no alcoholics or gambling addicts? Of course not.
No, but that said, there are always going to be some people.
But have we therefore banned those things? What happened with Prohibition? Did it mean that everybody stopped being an alcoholic? No,
kids
of course
are going to still be
What's happening right now with the massive clamping down on smoking, it simply means people are buying their cigarettes illegally. It doesn't stop people from doing these things. Once it's out in the world, you can't really stop it. You can't put it back in the box. It's a bit like the whole nuclear proliferation thing. Oh, well, this is dangerous technology. Not everybody should have it. Oh, it's everywhere now. You can't do that with technology. It's up to you. As a parent, you want your child to not be addicted to a phone, don't give them the phone. Really straightforward.
I just think that's far too easy for people who, so your kid's the only kid in the classroom without a phone.
Yeah, and my kid will be the only one that is not therefore addicted to the phone.
Yeah,
and
but your kid will also be the
later.
kid who doesn't go to any parties, doesn't go to anything. No one talks to them, and they're the freak in the corner.
No, that's nonsense.
No, I'm sorry. That is the reality. They are in schools
I was
today.
the only kid that wasn't allowed Pokemon cards at school. Was like ostracized? No,
it's not.
It's the same. It's a phenomenon. It's a craze. It's a craze. That's what it is.
Thing.
It is.
Phones
I'm sorry.
are so much more dominant in our lives.
Are you giving 13-year-olds phones so they can organise their own social events? Because that's basically what you're saying.
I've got to be honest with you. Yes, 13. Yeah, that's more my 13.
Then again, sorry, guys, your kids are going to suffer. Like that's the end. That's the end of it. And I'm sorry. Also, as AI becomes more powerful, we are going to get to a point where more and more people are going to have the same attitude as me, which is going cold turkey on this thing is the only solution. That's
the main issue, let's face it, and we all know when we see families out and about, and actually, it's mum and dad are glued to their phones as well, as opposed to. I cannot express this strongly enough. Talk to your kids. I don't mean give them a lecture. I mean just generally talk to your kids. So if you're doing this, why do you think your kids looking at their phone? There's going
to be people listening going, what, do I turn around to my 4-year-old and go, catch the game last night? What do I talk to this kid about?
Yes, 4-year-olds. You talk to 4-year-olds. Absolutely, you talk to 4-year-olds. Seriously. Honestly, I mean, it's mind-blowing how few people, you see people, they genuinely... I can walk past two parents wheeling their buggy. We've got a couple of nurseries in our street. I walk past a parent, their kid is... Even at nursery, their kid has got their phone. They're watching some cartoon or something on the phone, like... So what, watching the world around you isn't interesting enough? No, because it keeps them quiet.
Yeah,
if you always got a snack as well, because that keeps them quiet as well. Mum's on her phone or dad's on his phone. And then you get the parents who are walking along and they're going like, oh, let's look for... Can we see a... we still had a game.
A butterfly.
Can you see an orange car? I mean, literally, we would count the cars. We'd count... I mean, we just... I'm telling you, I'll tell you right now, which one of those kids is going to do well in their exams, is going to be employable, is going to be happy and have relationships and not be a freak. And not have a mental health problem on a Monday morning. That means they can't work for life. I'm telling you right now, and we all know which kid it is. Anyway, I want to come back to Chagos.
So you agree with me? I win. Nice.
No.
Oh, it's frustrating, but it happens. It happens. You just got to let it go. But we're going to move on to the Chagos Islands because I'm right on that too.
Because I know you want to talk about Chagos. It's fascinating. I mean, I know a lot of people get very cross when we have Tobias Elwood. He's been really sound on lots and lots of issues on defence. But this idea, again, that we had to give the Chagos Islands back and then release Diego Garcia military base back. I won't go through all the details again. It's incredibly complicated. But basically, there was never any reason under it was the legal decision anyway, and under a convention that we weren't going to be able to keep the base because of this particular rule of the sea. Absolute nonsense. The government ministers have lied to America. They've lied to us. They've lied in Parliament. That, by the way, is a resigning offence. This is simply untrue.
Yeah.
We do not have to give this away. Certainly not. And that needs to be stopped.
Yeah. Any historical claim is nonsense. There were no people on these islands until Europeans got to them. That's the islands are closer. Care. The islands are closer to Mauritius, to the Maldives and India than they are to Mauritius. This idea that because of our own administrative error they have some claim is nonsense. And the ruling itself was advisory by a court that we don't have to listen to.
No.
The whole idea that we have to do this is for the birds, and it is nuts and very telling that this is what this government is pushing ahead with, come hell or high water.
At great cost to the taxpayer.
When there are so many other things that they could and should be prioritising, this is what they care about.
I mean, again, we are looking at, isn't it a £15 billion bill? Or it could be a lot more than that?
Oh, it will be more than that.
No, £34 billion bill. I mean, we need to spend a load more on our defences over the next few years. That $34 billion would be really useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would buy us probably 2 tanks, given how much money we waste on the MOD. But still, that is money that could be going elsewhere, or life-saving surgery on the NHS, all sorts of things that we could spend that money rather than giving it to a country that has nothing to do with us and doesn't know.
Let's clarify that the Green Party absolutely wouldn't be spending any of that money. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't.
They'd be using it as insulation. They'd be taking it all out in £5 notes and sticking it in the walls of somebody's house and going, well, this is a good use of now all we need is another 180 trillion to do the rest of this street. And that's what they'd probably see as good money well spent. Because, of course, money is not real to these people.
I'm getting really fed up with seeing Zach Polanski get these easy rides. This man is dangerous.
And he's still never made anybody's breasts grow bigger. He's a fraud.
I know. I went to him and anyway, 11:27 is the time. If you don't know what that's relation to, where have you been? 11:27 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Going to hear from you, 0344 499 1000. Lots of you want to get in touch about that compensation for the migrants who had their mobile phones taken away. Is this finally the last straw? Or is it just us aware of this stuff and actually going, are you insane? Because it looks like our government and our courts really are. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. We're late again. I'm rubbish at this. Well, at some point, do you know what? I've been doing this for, what is it, a total of about 14 years, and I still can't do my timings. I'm really sorry. 11:30, we're going to go straight to your calls. Jason is on the line, 0344 499 1000. He's in Plymouth. Jason, you want to talk about the madness of paying, what, £6,000 plus compensation to migrant for having his phone taken away and examined when he's arrived illegally in the country.
Hi, Julia. Yeah, it's firstly, I've got to sympathise with the outrage of your listeners. I've been listening all morning, and I'm not surprised. Like you say, this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. 6,000 quid. I mean, yeah. One, how was that number arrived at?
Yes.
I could buy a phone tomorrow for 100 quid. I don't know if you saw Isabel Oakeshot's piece a little while ago about that builder who went over to the camps.
Yeah.
So anecdotally, it costs round about 2,000 quid at the moment to get a trip across on a boat.
That's the market working. It was £5,000 a few years ago, isn't it? Isn't capitalism great?
Unless, of course, you're in the VIP lane, which I gather it costs you a little bit more.
Right.
So these guys, these people coming over on the boats, they're knowingly and willingly breaking the law. They're either breaking the law in France, they're breaking the law here. This is a criminal act. Okay. So these compensation claims, the net result is now that we're actually paying the money. Therefore, the taxpayer is funding their trip. Yeah. They're getting far more money than the actual trip cost them in the first place. Yeah. So not only do they get their trip paid for retrospectively, they get a nice little bung or a few grand as a result of it. Now, one, that's just morally wrong. And two, it's illegal in itself. How can you knowingly pay people to break the law? Yeah. Surely there's enough writhing and worming by lawyers to compensate illegal work. Yeah. Why can't they do it on our behalf and look after the majority?
I know, wouldn't that be nice? But I just don't understand, these people arriving in the country legally. I don't know, was it under this particular period in time? This was April to November 2020. Was it not illegal to arrive in the country illegally? I mean, was that when you weren't at that time designated a foreign criminal, and therefore, they didn't have a right to take your phone? I'm utterly bewildered and flummoxed by this. But the main problem we have is we've got judges, we've got tribunals, we've got lawyers who are completely and utterly twisting law, the human rights legislation, into a madness that it was never intended to be.
It's a racket. It's a racket.
It is.
It's siphoning millions of pounds of taxpayers' money off, thanks to Article 8. And what it's doing, maybe it is an unintended consequence, I don't know, but it's given the green light to these people to say, right, well, let's jump in a boat because one, it gets paid for us. Yep. And they must be laughing at us.
Not must be. They are. We know they're laughing. We've seen the TikTok videos. Jason, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you. Philippa is on the line in Dorset. Hello, Philippa.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Benedict.
Good morning.
I am absolutely incensed by the compensation given for phone seizures. It is insane, as you said. With that money should be spent on Indigenous people in this country who are struggling through the cost of living crisis. It shouldn't be spent on any immigrants. They need to go back where they came from.
Yep.
They're coming here illegally.
War-torn France.
Conversation. I am sick to death of this conversation about immigrants.
I couldn't agree with you more.
About it. We need to stop talking about it and do something.
Absolutely. Why? I mean, I know, Tories talked a good game. Labour talking a good game, but nothing actually ever happens. I mean, Reform are promising. I think they're our only hope at this current time. I mean, Lib Dems and Greens would come on in, come on over. We'll provide a formal taxi service for you. No one's illegal, all that nonsense. But do you have any hope that this is ever going to be dealt with? Because, again, I'm not so bothered about people getting compensation for phones as I am about 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds getting raped by men who didn't have any business being in the country.
That is
nothing seems
appalling.
to change the minds of the idiot, lunatic, I think immoral human rights lawyers who act for these people.
Well, I'm going to a reform meeting this evening, and Nigel Farage is going to be there, and I'm going to make sure I have a chat with him about what's going on, because something needs to be done. People need to stop making promises, and they need to take action.
Absolutely.
And I also want to say, I hope Benedict had a lovely Valentine's Day.
Oh, hello, Philippa. Oh, did you have a look?
Well, I'm alive.
You were alive. Did you have a nice Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it was great. I drank a lot.
Do you want to tell us what you did?
No, what way? Which day was Valentine's Day?
Oh, Saturday.
Saturday. Oh, I watched the rugby. It wasn't good.
Philippa, he had a nice Valentine's Day. Thank you very much indeed for that. And send my best to Nigel Farage. Tell him he hasn't been on the show for a bit to come on. 8344 499 1000 is the number to have your say. Up next, going to talk to Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society about, well, why the Americans are offering refugee status to a man who burnt a Koran here if he loses a High Court case tomorrow. And why on earth are the Greens going door to door in many different cities around our country on what has been called a Jew hunt? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. Let's turn our attention to a whole range of stories I want to talk to Dr. Alan Mendoza about. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. He's also Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's talk about Hamid Kushkin. I mean, he's not a household name. He's somebody at the Free Speech Union, of which I'm a member, has been helping. He's a Turkish man who came to this country, and because he is someone who's opposed to Islam, someone who's fled Turkey because he's given up his belief in Islam. He burnt a Quran outside the Turkish embassy, as he is legally entitled to do. He was viciously attacked by a man from the embassy who went back in to get a knife, rather deliberate, who extraordinarily, despite the camera catching his full assault and saying he was going to try and kill Hamid Kushkin, did not end up going to prison, extraordinarily. Hamid Kushkin originally charged with blasphemy, a blasphemic crime, even though no such crime exists. He was convicted. He then appealed. He won that. Tomorrow in the High Court, for some bizarre reason, the Crown Prosecution Service is appealing his overturning of that conviction. And now we have the absurdity of the White House saying that they'll offer him refugee status if his conviction is reinstated. What the hell, Alan, is going on?
Well, Julia, I can't say anything in response to that. I mean, you've just highlighted the whole insanity of this case. I mean, look, burning Qurans is not something I recommend people doing.
Agreed.
Just general, but you are allowed to do it under law. It is not. We do not have blasphemy laws in this country. We've got rid of them surprisingly late. Interestingly enough, it was only sort of 15 years ago, 20 years ago we got rid of them, but they're gone. And so as a result, we shouldn't be protecting religion in this way. And it is interesting how they tried multiple ways to get him on a conviction. He, of course, managed to successfully appeal that, but it's crazy. They've gone back to court again. Why are they doing this?
Well, originally, in the original case, he was convicted of religiously aggravated public order offence, and part of the judge's ruling, extraordinarily, was, well, it was religious aggravation. It did actually offend people because this man went and got a knife and tried to stab you repeatedly. That was the proof that you had provoked someone else. Now, that's quite a bizarre situation where basically the proof that what you've done was offensive or provocative was that someone was provoked and decided to commit a criminal act against you. That is quite an astonishing turnaround on what our laws should be. And that judge, frankly, needs to be taken out and shot, is my view. But
well, I'm not sure.
That's okay.
But I know what you mean.
By the way, that's a turn of phrase, people.
Turn of phrase, exactly.
Not actually calling for him to be shot before the idiots at the back of the room think that's what I said. Yeah.
But let's be realistic here. You're right. That what once again has happened is that a judge, and look at the cases now, Julia. Weekly, we're getting crazy rulings from judges who are sort of challenging the basis of how we've lived our life in this country for years on end. Does this judge not realise that if he, I'm assuming it's a he, if he gives a ruling that says that it's down to the threat of violence from offended people that we therefore have to judge cases, all that means is we're going to get a lot of offended violent people who then dictate to the rest of this country what they think should be the law. It's a crazy thing for a judge to have suggested is the basis of how you define law. I'm sure that's why it was overturned, and I hope sincerely that it of course does not be reinstated at this point in time, because that would again embolden the radicals and extremists in our society to be even more radical and extremist than they already are, which is pretty radical and extremist.
Again, it's just letting the mob basically decide what our laws are. And again, we wouldn't have... I'm with you. I don't want people burning Qurans. I don't want people burning Bibles. I don't want people burning, Harry Potter or a guide to caravanning. I don't think we should be burning books generally. But I do think there's an issue if someone's burning a religious text outside of a place of worship, causing... I think that's harassment. I think outside an embassy, as a political statement, I have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever, and it's extraordinary. But the humiliation for our country that America would offer refugee status, yes, it's a political stunt, obviously, for them to do that, but they're making a very fair point that we are rapidly losing our freedom of speech, and the Prime Minister is part of the problem in terms of lots of other areas. Let's also talk about freedom of speech for someone to say, I support Palestine Action, because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have been arrested for those protests where they've worn those T-shirts. Now, general rule, I'm not that keen on retired vicars getting arrested for wearing a T-shirt. Seems a bit silly to me. We've got other crimes that are being committed. But the Home Office decision to prescribe Palestine Action under anti-terrorism legislation was ruled on Friday as being by the High Court as unlawful. The group does remain banned for the time being until there's an appeal. But the police have said they won't arrest anybody during that time, which seems to me to be a bit bizarre. But 3 senior judges basically ruled that while Palestine Action does use criminality to promote its aims, its activities had not crossed the very high bar to make it a terrorist organisation. Do you think the court was right, or do you think the government's right in prescribing Palestine Action?
Well, there's another factor that people haven't discussed in this, which is rather significant. It wasn't just the government making a ruling. Parliament voted on it, Julia.
Yeah.
Parliament voted by a large majority to support the government's position. That makes it a slightly different case, in my view, to the Home Office just issuing a willy-nilly prescription.
Yeah.
Parliament considered it, they agreed it. Parliament is sovereign in this country. It is not the job of judges to unpick what Parliament decides. That is how our country operates constitutionally.
It's their job to enforce the law once the law is made by our MPs.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And so I think it's extraordinary that a judge has tried to, or judges have tried to unpick a vote of Parliament in this regard. It causes all kinds of chaos in our constitutional system. And you've just also highlighted the madness that it means the police are in this limbo land where they don't quite know what to do, because on the one hand, the ban is there. On the other hand, judges say it's not correct. And so we're in a very difficult situation. If I'm the Home Secretary, I'm pleased that she's obviously appealed this straight away to a higher court, which will hopefully see sense in the matter and go, Parliament's ruled it, end of story. But if it doesn't, for whatever case, the government needs to have legislation up its sleeve to introduce straight away to form a way of prescribing this group that then does enable Parliament's will to be carried out.
I do have question marks about whether or not it is a terrorist group in the sense of what I think of as terrorism. Certainly their activities, they've caused criminal damage to, RAF jets. They've used violence repeatedly, and certainly there's been ongoing court cases, and there's possibly going to be retrials involving involving, people armed with sledgehammers, and a police officer being attacked whilst, from behind with a sledgehammer, with her back being with some of her back being broken. I mean, this is certainly terrorising. But is it what we think of as a terror group as opposed to I would just say, organised criminal group?
Well, that's an interesting question. Look, terrorism is usually defined in the broadest sense as trying to achieve political means by violence. Well, they've used violence as far as I'm concerned.
And they have a political objective. Yeah.
And they have a political objective. So, look, I think they do fall under that category. But let's assume you don't for a second. Let's assume you think they are merely a criminal group. Okay, so then you need to introduce legislation to reflect that, to say you're still being banned because we don't think criminal groups ought to have adherents saying support criminality. Yeah. That too is madness in this sort of day and age. Look, so I think either way, the government needs to, as I said, I think because the House of Commons has voted on it, I think that's significant in terms of what Parliament has said should be the law of the land, and therefore I think the judges are wrong. But if for whatever reason the judges decide that they want to stick to this very aggressive line, the government should come back immediately and find another way to do what it wants to do. And it will get the support, I'm sure, the House of Commons.
But also, I did find it extraordinary, all these people say, we've got a right to free speech. Yeah, you can support the nation of a state of Palestine. You can, worry about kids in Gaza. You can do all of that. You can have your views on Israel, but you don't necessarily have to support a group that actually is, is a prescribed group. Let's also talk about the Greens, because they're a bit of a worry to me at the moment. Have been for quite some time, but they seem remarkably unconcerned about green and environmental issues these days. Mind you, they've got the Labour Party doing all their green nonsense for them, and the Lib Dems as well, quite happily, and the Tories for many years. But now their activism seems to be almost entirely based on we hate Israel and we are concerned about the Palestinians. Now, not only have we got Green Party activists, grassroots members of the party, they're pushing in motions at the next Green Party Spring Conference, saying that Zionism, so the belief in the right of the Jewish people to their home, to a nation state, they say that Zionism should be treated as a form of racism. They're calling for the belief in the right of Jews to self-determination to be classed as a racist ideology. Also calling for a single Palestinian state. They're not even going through the pretense of a two-state solution now. Also, of course, they want to cut investment in police and prisons and leave NATO. There's a variety of, frankly, insane proposals. But this also comes as we've had what people are quite openly calling, and I think it really is, a Jew hunt on the streets of a number of different places around the country, including Brighton and Sheffield, where we have seen green activists, including in one case an MP, basically going around door to door asking people if they support their campaign to boycott Israeli products, noting down whether they agree or disagree with them and whether they're Jewish or not. This is incredibly sinister. Is this just campaigning and should be considered reasonable, or is this something that we need to look more closely at?
Well, you've bumped a lot of things in there, and all of them are concerning, it seems to me. From the starting point, the Greens are openly going around, essentially now on social media, we've seen it, saying that we've replaced the green of environmentalism with the green of Islam in terms of what we think is our selling point, the voters of Gorton and Denton. It's fascinating just looking at the literature they're putting out.
Okay. Don't mention a candidate, please. Or other candidates are standing.
I'm just saying, but it's fascinating looking at the literature they put out in Urdu and, kind of clearly targeting and the messaging that's going around that. They're open about what they're doing.
No, by the way, no campaign literature in an election in this country should be in any language other than English, full stop. If you can't speak English properly, you shouldn't be voting. You shouldn't have a vote.
I would agree. It's a very strong point. And again, that's something that should be looked at. And then more broadly, you can see the opposition to anything in relation to Israel. It seems to be their raison d'etre now in terms of their approach. So it's hugely problematic because, if you look at the, issue of Zionism, they're complaining the Jewish state is racist. The Jewish state is 20% Arab, for goodness sakes. I mean, they don't even know basic facts.
No,
That's what's so embarrassing about all of this. There are no basic facts put into this. And then when it comes to this sort of, apartheid anti-Israel stuff they're doing door to door. Of course, it's an intimidatory tactic. It's intimidating to anyone who opens the door to them and then gets browbeaten by "you're supporting genocide if you don't do this."
Yep.
It's aggressive. It's again untrue. It's the government has said it's untrue. Others have kind of pointed out clearly how nonsensical this genocidal claim is, but they persist in doing it. And when you spread lies like that, of course it's aggressive. Of course it's intimidatory. And yes, frankly, it's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Green Party, let me tell you right now, you're welcome to come to my door anytime, and let's see how well that goes for you. Dr. Alan Mendoza, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Benedict Spence, just a quick thought on that. I mean, there's been called, it's a Jew hunt. They're noting down who they think's Jewish, who's not Jewish in this area, and asking you, are you on our side or against that? I mean, why on earth is a campaign about Israel anything to do with a local election anyway?
Because whenever people start to think about the Israel-Palestine thing, particularly on one side, they think that their special cause matters so much more because, of course, they go genocide and they go all of these things, as Alan Mendoza pointed out. Exactly. But they think they can justify it if they shout it often enough. It is old-fashioned anti-Semitism. The prejudice has never gone away. We've never entirely sort of addressed it in this country, but other parts of Europe as well. And we've just been allowed to tolerate it. We've allowed it to fester. Yeah. And now these people feel empowered because they've seen marching through London every week. You can chant whatever you want. The police don't understand Arabic. They're not going to arrest people for saying things that are overtly anti-Semitic. It is what has allowed this sort of creep. And, other things as well. We're going to see this as well with the outcome of the trial with the Palestine Action individuals. People are sat there going, well, this exonerates them. This means that they're completely off the hook. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. That situation has not been resolved. But that is going to embolden an awful lot of people who think that this behaviour in the pursuit of ending the genocide, because of course genocide is the worst thing that can ever happen, and if you just shout genocide, everybody has to believe you, they will believe that this is totally acceptable. This is where we are now.
Because they think they're the good people.
Exactly.
You are not the good people. Trust me, you are not the good people. You are seriously, seriously scary, dangerous people. 11:50 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking again just more about the insanity of illegal migrants coming to this country, having their phones confiscated and then getting £6,000 plus compensation for the police taking their phones. Absolute madness. We're going to talk to Robert Bates of the Centre for Migration Control. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 11:53 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spence is here. And now Robert Bates is joining us too. He's Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Always a sensible voice on all issues involving particularly the illegal migration, utter madness. But I have to say, Robert Bates, I mean, we've had so many stories about, the horrific, the rapes, the sexual assaults, the illegal working, the general criminality, the cost of people's legal representation, the cost of their accommodation, their food, the taxis to medical appointments. We never seem to hit that breaking point when the lefty right on woke brigade go, oh yeah, You're right, this is insane. This story is a tiny drop in the ocean, and yet it's really got people's goats. This is the more than 70 boat migrants who arrived between April and November 2020, very specific time period, awarded between them £500,000 in compensation, £6,500 each basically, because their phones were seized at the time, and now it turns out that was illegal and it was in breach of their European human rights laws. What do you make of this madness?
Well, once you pay the Dane Guild, you never get rid of the Dane, and I think this is really indicative of those wider pull factors that we do know are a key reason why individuals choose to come to Britain rather than other European countries. But what this is indicative of is the fact that as soon as an individual's foot is on British soil, bestowed upon them is every single legal right, the ability to appeal, the ability to have things reviewed, the ability to claim your human rights have been breached, that actually probably should only really be reserved for those that are actually here in this country legally. I think, unfortunately, we've seen a whole architecture emerge, especially with human rights lawyers, where they almost pride themselves now on coming up with the most creative, outlandish ways to abuse.
As we were saying earlier, they're making a lot of money out of this. They're being paid usually by the taxpayer. So there was a 750 grand bill, 735 grand bill to fight this case, according to a Freedom of Information revelation. We don't get given this information unless it's dragged kicking and screaming out of the government. So we'll be paying for the government to defend it. But we'll also be paying for the legal aid for the migrants too, won't we?
Well, of course, and if you actually look at the individuals that have been doing the representation here, you can see they don't actually want a correct result by the letter of the law. You know, the actual lawyer that represented these individuals is sort of boasts about being one of the most creative human rights lawyers in the country.
Brilliant.
Read into that, basically, he's able to come up with the biggest load of baloney to get the outcome that he wants. And unfortunately, this is a very real problem now. We are effectively funding this crisis ourselves. And I think when you consider, of course, the asylum costs are a huge, huge draw factor. But I really do think that actually it is just this sheer level of protection that we afford to every individual that is one of the key problems here.
But that protection comes mostly under Article 8, the right to privacy in a family life, under the European rights legislation. But there's one paragraph of that gives you that right, and then there's another paragraph with all the reasons why you have that taken away from you, for public safety, for criminality, for national security and everything like that. For some reason, our activists, not just lawyers, but our activist judges in the courts and the tribunals seem to always ignore that side of it, that we have rights too, and the rights of two different people or two different groups of people have to be weighed up together. But they always seem to side on the side of the illegal migrant.
Well, quite, and actually, you could well see the logic behind confiscating the phones off these individuals. We don't know who they are; they're unvetted.
They've entered
we don't know who they're
illegally.
in contact with, what they're planning when they're in this country. We've seen instances of Iranians coming into the country with the very explicit goal of committing atrocities, and taking away a mobile phone is quite a minor inconvenience for the individual, but it ensures a level of safeguarding for the British public at large. So this is another instance of a two-tier justice system where the well-being and safety of Brits, no, we can do without that. Let's try and get a quick buck for these chaps.
Absolutely. And again, we've seen also, the government cannot disclose, apparently does not know or will not tell us how many of these migrants who claim to be children are shown to actually ever be children in the end. We've had blokes in their 30s, for goodness sake, big burly airy blokes, people with receding hairlines claiming to be under 18. Absolute nonsense. And now we've got the latest. And again, how much madder can it get? This is a migrant. I mean, I'm assuming in the country legally. I don't know. A Filipino man who's in the country applying for indefinite leave to remain, hasn't actually got it yet. So he's not British citizen. He's not, but he's been given tens of thousands of pounds worth of treatment paid for by the NHS in a private hospital, paid for by us, to supposedly change sex. So he's had his todger cut off. He's had a load of surgery that's totally unnecessary, totally life-saving. And we've paid for it, and he's not even, at that time, wasn't even having a right to stay in the country. I mean, this is properly mad when there are people literally dying because they can't get health treatment when they're British citizens.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the NHS, and this is an absolutely ridiculous case, I think, unfortunately, there is some guidance on actually what foreign nationals should be entitled to when it comes to treatment. It's not strict enough, but unfortunately, it's very much down to the individuals on the ground to make these decisions. And you just know it will have been some sort of green-haired, rabid campaigner that has decided that this is somehow a worthwhile way to spend British taxpayers' money. And this is why we need much, much stricter parameters as to what foreign nationals are not entitled to when it comes to the NHS.
Because emergency care only is my answer.
Well, quite, or something that is perhaps more long-saving. But even there's questions about whether actually we're seeing health tourism increasing in this country. Yeah. There are hundreds of millions of pounds that are technically owed to the NHS by foreign nationals that has just simply not been paid up, and there's no intent from any administrative officer in these NHS trusts to actually chase up those bills.
Exactly.
Well,
because well, you got to remember, no one's illegal, are they, Robert? Everyone is entitled to live anywhere they want and live off the other taxes paid by everyone who's been here. It's genuinely madness. Robert Bates at the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you for that. You'll hear the music there. Coming up at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking more about Andrew and Epstein. And why is there not a police probe into Prince Andrew just yet? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or your connection device, thank you so much for joining us. With you all the way till 1. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, is also still with us. And I like the little question one of our callers asked you about your Valentine's earlier.
Well, keep them coming. You're going to get the same answer over and over again.
More personal questions for Benedict Spence. Very much welcome.
Where do you get your hair?
Where do you? You have got a fine head of hair.
I do.
You do. I love it. I do.
That's why I didn't need a good Valentine's, because it was just me and my hair.
Just you and your hair. Did you give your hair roses?
Again, doesn't need it. I just need to look at it in the mirror.
So much more to talk about in this hour. Oh, goodness me. Now, I don't know why we're not giving Valentine's roses to boat migrants now, to be fair. Lots of you are getting in touch, not just to ask personal questions of Benedict about his weekend, but also the 70 Channel boat migrants who've won payouts, £6,500 each so far. There could be a load more, but they've totaled over almost 500 grand after their mobile phones were seized in a breach of their human rights. Again, I don't know how it's a breach of your human rights. You've come into the country illegally. This is between April and November 2020, and your phone is taken because they want to look through your phone and you tell us about the people smuggler who you paid your money to. I mean, this is so obviously something that is perfectly reasonable for the authorities to do, and yet they're winning compensation. And we paid £735,000 in legal fees. Someone is making a hell of a lot of money. It's the people smugglers, it's the migrants who are being paid for, and it's the lawyers. And I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm done with paying for this nonsense. It's absolute madness. Your calls coming in thick and fast on that. If you want to call in on anything else, you're also very welcome. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text costs £1, standard network rate message. We're also going to talk more about that sort of tech firms being told to basically protect children from illegal content online, and also Keir Starmer set to surrender Britain to the EU's net zero rules. And basically Ed Miliband, Mr. would like to be leader again, basically going to have to choose between blackouts and missing net zero targets. Some of us have been pointing this out for many years, but there we are. As I say, Benedict Spence is still with me. Let's talk about another topic now. Our guest we're just going to get him on the line in just one moment. Di Davies, he's former head of Royal Protection. We spoke to him as soon as these Epstein files exploded in our faces. The story is about Mandelson, obviously already subject for police investigation in terms of the leaking of highly confidential government information, it would appear from the Epstein files to Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive, and already, by the way, well, no, I think before then he wasn't a convicted paedophile, but we've also had similar allegations about Andrew, as he was, Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, that he, when he was a UK trade envoy for 10 years from 2001, that he also leaked confidential information, and that his meetings, say, when he would go to China, those meetings would be arranged for Jeffrey Epstein's convenience rather than his. Quite a lot of questions about whether or not young women, possibly girls, were basically sent on the Lolita Express, the Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, to basically, you know, for Prince Andrew's use. He has denied any wrongdoing, as has Lord Manson. I have to state that. But again, I think we're entitled to question whatever Prince Andrew says about anything, given that Newsnight interview he gave to Emily Maitlis. Clearly, every other word is proven now to be a lie. But lots of people are asking, why is there not already a police investigation into Andrew? The King and the Queen last week said they would cooperate. I mean, hey, yeah, that's the bare minimum we would expect. Do you think there's been a cover-up? Do you think there is a real wariness of getting involved, or do you think that it's going to happen?
I think it will happen. I think it is being handled very delicately because it crosses all sorts of jurisdictions and is of relevance to all sorts of organisations. I don't think we should, forget the fact that a lot of this information was known to the security services, and the security services are not in the business of simply monitoring people who are up to no good at a domestic level or, the broadly criminal level. That means that there is other things, and that there are other things at play. There are many allegations about the role of various security services around the world in the dealings of Jeffrey Epstein and people that he was associated with.
There's talk about him being basically, well, he was working for the Russians,
Mossad, us,
CIA.
It is entirely possible that he has worked for all of these people. That's often how people like that work. But this is the thing. There are going to be many elements to this. And so, yes, there is going to be a little bit of caution and hesitancy from some people for genuine, legitimate reasons, because we don't know the extent. It could impact things like national security. You don't know if perhaps there are links with other people who are based in other countries who are also working for those security services who aren't known to people. Covers can be blown. So that's going to be a lot of the way up. Whether or not you can reveal everything.
So there can be completely legitimate reasons why this hasn't been investigated.
Oh, of course there will, absolutely. I mean, the scale of this thing should tell people, and the number of people, incredibly important people, former presidents, princes, that sort of thing. This is not going to be just limited to these people. It will also involve powerful people in other countries as well.
Mandelson lost his job as a British ambassador to the US. We've seen a French government minister resign over allegations about them, and again, this is the thing. And we all thought this was a sex issue, a sex crime issue, but it's way bigger than that.
Sex is simply, that what you can offer people for very base instincts, which is often the undoing of people, sex or money or, influence.
Sex, money, power.
Yeah, really, that's all you need for a lot of these people. That's a way of opening the door.
Chocolate. For me, it's just chocolate.
That's why during Lent, nothing can be off the table when it comes to you. You'll do anything. You'll spy.
I'm not religious. I don't feel the need to give up anything I like.
Well,
I think it's weird.
You think it's weird?
I don't do dry January.
Really?
I don't know. I don't do any of that nonsense.
Oh, you really should. You really should.
Really
I think it would really mellow you out.
I don't know.
Not getting access to chocolate. Your husband's not going to thank me for that at all.
No, it's not going to.
You sat there listening to the radio, going, "Please don't take chocolate away from her. Don't give her this
or
idea."
alcohol. I can't do life without alcohol. What sort of madness is that? Anyway, really interesting to get your perspective. I'd love to know what my next guest thinks. Di Davies is former head of Royal Protection and joins us again on the show. Very good afternoon to you, Di.
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to be back with you.
Thank you so much. Well, we've spoken to you, I think, every week since this story kind of blew up. And again, what you were telling us on the very first day when the Epstein files had first been published, well, 3 million of them redacted, but was, quite extraordinary in terms of who must have known what about the proclivities of Andrew. Because certainly at that time, when involved the allegations against Andrew, this was very much about him still being mates with Jeffrey Epstein very close mates, long after he'd been convicted of being of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. So, and when he'd said, of course, he'd broken off contact, then it's exploded into him being accused of similar allegations that Peter Mandelson is facing about leaking confidential government documents when he was a UK trade envoy. Do you think that there has been, until this point, a deliberate cover-up, and that a lot of these allegations, I think he's denied everything, that a lot of these allegations have been known to senior figures in the royal family, senior figures in the Metropolitan Police, senior security people?
Well, yes, is the honest answer. As you know, 6 years ago, I asked the police why they weren't investigating the original allegations. And it seems to me over the years, and I've said it consistently, so it's interesting now that what I've been saying for a number of years, along with Andrew Lowney, the author, is actually coming to fruition. And everybody's coming out now and saying, oh, he should be investigated for this, that, and the other. The truth is, this is a serially bad man, in my humble opinion, and the evidence points to it. But it pointed to it 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's pointed to it if anybody had bothered to look at it. And one has to ask why he's been allowed. Wasn't there any scrutiny at any level in government, in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, through ambassadors? I mean, it requires a multitude of investigations, and I hear what your other colleague says, but, the sanctity of women, frankly, comes before most things as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, Benedict's making a face there, but yeah, the rights of young women not to be raped by people because they are, a billionaire paedophile. This. I think most of us would draw the line of that. But this is the thing. These allegations were made by Virginia Giuffre. We had that absurd Newsnight interview. It was proven to have said a number of things in that interview that just simply were not backed up by what could be established as objective fact. Big question marks raised. I think it's extraordinary that the Metropolitan Police have never actually, in all this time, never actually bothered to interview him. We've discussed this before, when they interview people over ridiculous things like a tweet. But this is the thing, as you discussed with us before, and I do think this is really worth carrying on. Where does this end in terms of people knowing things? Because you said close protection officers would have known where he was and who he was with, and probably a lot of what he was doing. That gets pushed up the ranks, senior Met figures. Politicians will, the government would have been told this stuff, for goodness sake. The Prime Minister would have been told this stuff at the time, whoever it was. Senior royal figures would have been told this stuff, and yet nothing was done. Do you think, King Charles, okay, he wasn't king then, he is king now, he's saying and doing all the right things now, stripping of titles and all of that. Do you think he's still got a case to answer?
Well, yes, I do, but how on earth you go investigating a king is beyond my pay grade and knowledge of it, frankly.
Well, he's above the law. He's literally legally above the law, isn't he?
Well, he is, and that's the law. And it was the same with Queen Elizabeth when she gave evidence at the Burrell so-called issues. It really is very difficult. And the police have been reluctant, in my experience, since the Burrell trial to actually go hard on anyone. But, the latest one where he was alleged, that's Andrew, to actually ask colleagues to get the dirt on Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, they even said that there was nothing to answer. But if you don't investigate, if you don't question people, and that would have gone all the way up to private secretaries, if not higher. Something rotten is in our establishment to allow people like Mandelson and now more and more is coming out about Prince Andrew.
But we know we've seen cover-ups of all these sort of things before. We know, we had, whether it's, Jimmy Savile, loads of stuff was known about him, the BBC and politicians and everyone, covered it up. I mean, Cyril Smith, the Lib Dem MP at the time, they needed him to be an MP because they, in terms of voting in the House of Commons or something. I mean, people, there are numerous, very, very, very bad people who numerous people have known were up to things. Now, again, I must stress, Andrew has denied any criminal wrongdoing. I need to stress that. We have innocence until proven guilty in this country. But it does seem extraordinary. There seems to be a view among the great and the good that, well, we'll take his HRH away. He's no longer a prince. He doesn't get to live in Royal Lodge anymore. He gets another big home, bigger than most homes most people could ever dream of living. We'll hope he goes away quietly. No chance of Fergie doing that, I think we can safely say. And that will be his punishment. But if he has committed any of the crimes that it is alleged he has committed, that ain't enough of a punishment.
Well, let's get down to basics. He needs investigating by a police service that has the gumption and the courage to go where the evidence takes them. If that includes the security services, then go there as well. They're not immune either from the law in many respects. So let's go where the evidence takes us. But you need somebody with the courage, the vision, and the ability to differentiate various Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the various government agents, and those involved.
Yeah,
but they need to be questioned. And if there's evidence, that questioning must be under caution. I've been saying that for 6 years.
Yeah, you have consistently. But again, we've got two very different sets of allegations now. I mean, the evidence, he said, she said from women, although, of course, we've got flight logs, we've got the emails between Andrew and Epstein, and no doubt we're only seeing a small fraction of those. So there may well be more evidence. Again, search people's homes. That's what you do with suspects, don't you? To see if they've got anything. Again, we just talked about confiscate mobile phones. Maybe we're not allowed to apparently do it with migrants. Can we do it with a form of royal princes? But in terms of the allegations about leaking information, confidential information to Jeffrey Epstein, similar with Peter Manson. Again, they've denied any wrongdoing, but if those documents that are in the Epstein files are true, they are pretty damning and pretty black and white, quite literally sets of evidence against them.
Well, let's get down to basics. If it was you and I, and we'd alleged to have done a fraction of this, we would have had knocks, as I've said before, on our door. I simply don't understand whether there's even a degree of credible evidence, and everybody says there is, then in fairness to Andrew and Mandelson, they should be questioned, and they have all the rights that comes with somebody who proclaims innocence. It should be under caution.
You've worked with these people closely. You've been calling for this, and I 100% praise you for doing that. Why do you think it's not happening? Is it, as Benedict Spence has suggested, there may or may not be something else going on in terms of, who this would lead to and national security, or is this just about pure and utter cover-up? Is this about deference, misguided deference, like this is going to embarrass either the late Queen or now the King, and therefore we must try and make this go away? And do you think that's even possible in this day and age when social media, people can individually see these documents? They're not going to be covered up by, the editor of the Times having a nice dinner with the press secretary to the royal family and say, would you mind awfully not publishing this, and we'll give you a nice picture of Kate in a dress in return, which is what seems to be the deal that's happened many times over the years. Do you think that their willingness is it just misplaced deference, or is it something more sinister?
Well, I think it's an inability to face facts, if you like. And again, this has been going back to 2001, where Virginia, but it flows from then, and we wouldn't know any of this. And the royals wouldn't be saying, we're very sorry and we'll help the police, until very recently. I come back to the victims. People have known about these victims since Virginia made the allegations in 2015. So for 10, 11 years, I ask again, would you pay 12 million out to somebody who your son says, I've never met? Wouldn't you ask the questions? Wouldn't you get the authorities to tell you the truth? Otherwise, why on earth would you?
Yeah, exactly. And is that, we understand most of that money came from the Queen, but I think 1.5 million from the now King. And apparently if other sums coming from other royals. You do sort of wonder, people are all clubbing together to protect Andrew from simply giving evidence in a civil suit. It wasn't even like he was facing prison at the time. And that sort of payoff, when a businessman does that and then gets an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement signed, everyone says, oh, this is outrageous, this is an abuse of power. But apparently it's okay when a royal does it and the late Queen pays for it.
Well, quite, that's my point. An NDA means nothing when you're investigating a criminal offence.
Yeah.
Anyone connected with this, from those below the king downwards, they have a duty to tell the truth. And that's all I've been asking all along, tell the truth. He promised at the end of that interview and days afterwards he would cooperate if given legal advice.
Yeah.
Well, he's had so much time, hasn't he, to get that legal advice. And the legal advice seems to be keep stum.
Yeah.
But it simply isn't good enough. I think every newspaper, every agency, as you know, are calling this. Something has to give. And it has to be, unfortunately, starting at the head with the royal family downwards, and then we'll move on to ministers. What do they know? Yep. And I think this, with great respect, is the biggest scandal I can remember in my lifetime, and arguably even worse than the abdication.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on that. Di Davis, former head of Royal Protection, thank you so much for speaking so freely. Benedict Spence, he's very, very clear on this. I mean, there's the things, a lot of people who work closely with the royals or they're all part of that gang. I mean, it's like their friends are always, that's why they hated, Diana being friends with people like Mohammed Fayed. I mean, apart from the fact he was a crook, but also the fact that, as we know now, a serial rapist as well. Not a surprise to a lot of us, given the allegations at the time. But a lot of people who around the royals, they are very deferential. They do. It's all part of covering up a lot of this behaviour. Again, Andrew says he's not committed any crime, and he's innocent of all charges. Well, then answer the questions. But the police need to be asking them, and it doesn't appear like they're asking them.
Well, again, there is only so much at this moment that we understand about this, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if they are treading with caution, because there are many other aspects at play. And, we might think that the Metropolitan Police are very powerful, but do their desires, do their needs overrule those of the security services or of the US government, for instance? There are many, and these are just the ones we're talking about because we're Western democracies and we can be a degree more open than a lot of other countries. They will have been involvement of senior and important people in countries where journalists just disappear.
I don't believe for a moment that even if, again, he's said he's not guilty of any criminal action, that there aren't aspects to what has appeared in the Epstein papers, the Epstein files, that couldn't be brought to trial. Or certainly allegations
can't be released to the public.
And then and exactly without that. But I understand your point. I think there may be issues, but I do think there's also there is just this urge to sort of don't embarrass the British state.
Don't get me wrong.
Well, I'm sorry. You know what's embarrassing to the British state is someone alleging that they were basically basically trafficked to have sex with a man who was at one point second in line to the throne.
But that's absolutely the danger, is as part of treading lightly so as not to interrupt or upset certain aspects that need to be kept secure, that there is the potential for the cover-up, of course. And that's going to be what's motivating a lot of people to say, why isn't it coming out quickly? All I'm saying is, given the scale of the Epstein network, so to speak, is so much bigger actually than a lot of people expected, who's to say that even now we know the full extent, or what other things it might impact on? That's all that I'm saying, and therefore it makes sense that security services or other governments might say, can we just do this a bit in tandem so we all know where we are, because there's a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely. 12:22 is the time. We're going to take a break. Lots more calls coming in, particularly about these boat migrant stories and the compensation for phones. This is just... it's so funny. There are certain stories that just absolutely grab you by the throat and just say, are you kidding me? This is going on. And I think especially for an awful lot of people who, by the way, had their phones stolen, which is now a very common thing in this country. Apparently it's your fault for having it out. What were you thinking? How dare you be speaking on your phone on the street? No wonder you got robbed. But you don't get... You'd be lucky if your insurance will pay out. The police won't turn up. No one's ever going to be prosecuted for that crime, because apparently it's just a minor crime. But if a migrant has their phone taken away by the authorities after they've entered the country illegally, they're entitled to £6.5 grand's worth of a payout, and we pay the legal fees for them and for us.
Well, I was going to say, Julia, is this the motivation behind you being opposed to the idea of children having their phones taken away because your child might sue you? If that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, that's why you don't want to take the phones, because they might get a £6 payoff. Fair enough.
We had a bit of a row about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about. Those calls keep on coming about the migrants. I know you're as angry and just utterly bewildered as we are. So we'll get to those calls up next. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:25 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get to your calls and your messages. Get to some texts and tweets first of all about this. Just every time I read it out, I'm like, is this a joke? 70 channel boat migrants winning payouts totalling £500,000, £6.5 each so far after their mobile phones were seized. It's a breach of their human rights to take away their mobile phones. This is in basically for about 6 months in 2020, but apparently it wasn't legal to do that. It is legal now to do it, but it wasn't legal then. No one can work out why, but some mad court decision suggests that it is. But we've spent £750,000 on fighting it, and we've no doubt paid the legal aid for the migrants' human rights lawyers to fight that battle, and now we're paying them compensation as well. So basically, it's well worth them paying those people smugglers because they got the money back. Well done. What's your reaction? I did say earlier, try and keep it clean because I'm struggling, I have to say. Gavin says, not surprised, the whole system is a government-sponsored grift for them and the lawyers. Joe says, well, that's good. They'll be able to pay for everything themselves now. Oh, loving your work, Joe. Yeah. I mean, most people don't have a spare £6,000, do they? I'm pretty sure you can pay your own rent. Sorted. And also, surely you can use your money from the Uber Eats and Deliveroo accounts that you're delivering. Sam says, who's telling them about the different ways they can get money out of this country? That's what I want to know. Another disgrace, says Jim, and a humongous slap in the face to every single decent, hard-working Brit. Frankly, their human rights don't matter. Deport them. No, they do have human rights. Their human rights just don't include staying here. Neil says, what on earth will the High Court do next? God knows. Katie says, stop paying their lawyers. This money could pay for Brits waiting for medical treatment, or also migrants who from Philippines waiting for a sex change operation, which is what they've also been paid for today, Katie. Tracy says, this isn't a surprise, it's just a shame the British people don't have the same human rights. Well, exactly. Let's go to your calls. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what do you make of this?
Good morning, Julia.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, good afternoon. I think April the 20th, 1653 is relevant.
Yeah.
You got to look at this now. The law was upheld, but where was the justice? We've got to the point. Cromwell goes back into Parliament. He calls it a rump Parliament. No Parliament. He commanded them to leave and ordered the removal of the Speaker. We're at the point where the government is not representing what the people need to live their lives freely and reasonably. It's unreasonable.
Absolutely.
So the solution is to leave the ECHR with immediate effect and not pay them.
Yep.
Don't pay them. There's no penalty in not paying them.
Exactly.
And remember, you've been wrong, so technically I'll be brave and give you a slap on the wrist. They're not channel migrants. They're illegal.
Yeah.
They're illegal. They're not here legally.
Yeah.
Channel migrants isn't a thing.
Yeah.
They're illegal.
I say channel migrants so people know what we're referring to. Exactly. Illegal entrance. Well, I mean, invading force. That's what it is. I mean, I'm sorry, it is an invading force. Andrew, very good point. Thank you very much. Carl is in Liverpool, wants to have his say on this. What do you want to say, Carl?
Good afternoon, Julia. Yeah, I mean, I know last year they said that they were going to start taking phones as part of Smash the Gangs, but we don't have human rights as British people here, Julia. We're paying for these people now.
Yeah.
Full stop. Everything that they... I mean, now we're paying for phones that have been taken off them. I have to pay over £150 excess if my phone breaks or I lose it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get any consideration. You know, my human rights aren't thought of. It's just, well, you pay this and you can have a new phone. But it's got to stop. We need to leave the ECHR. And, you know, what my worry is, Julia, is if we have another few years of Labour and if he stays in, God knows where we'll be. But we need reform to come in and just leave the ECHR, scrap everything that Labour have put in place and start again. Now, a lot of people are going to think, well, it's going to take time and we're going to have to go through a lot more pain for it to be sorted. And that's my only worry, that reform...
Oh, it's going to be a general election if it's not till 2029, and then 2 years fighting the civil service and the Lords. And I mean, I'm convinced there must be quicker ways. We don't have like the executive order thing that they have in America. But when you think about some of those legal changes that happened during COVID, yes, it was a pandemic, but there was really no parliamentary proper scrutiny. There's none of that going on. I would be surprised to know. But again, and so much of this is just... It's basically pussyfooting around the human rights lawyers. And if you just say, we're not interested anymore, we're not paying for any of this, we're out, you're done, there's no more money for this, you don't get legal aid for being legal migrant, you don't have the same rights in this country because you've arrived illegally, full stop, end of, nothing to discuss. I mean, why can't they get that through? The British public would support that law.
Of course they would do. You know, they are illegal. That's front and centre. They're illegal. So
I can't just arrive in France without a passport and then have a load of rights there. They just ship me back straight away.
Yeah, of course. As soon as their feet shouldn't touch our soil, they should be taken off those dinghies and taken straight back. We're paying for it.
I know. Do you know what the first thing I do, again, there's lots to talk, and I'll ask you about this actually in terms of this idea of the sort of a patriotic duty. Zia Youssef from the Reform was asked about this at the weekend, about whether there be a coalition. But for me, genuinely, number one job, first job of any Reform, Tory, whatever government it's going to be, coalition, start building prison camps for both, so have a zero tolerance in terms of crime on our streets by Britons or anybody else, but also for the illegal migrants. But literally, your feet don't touch the floor. You're going to be in the prison camp, and it's going to be very basic, humane, but basic, and you can leave at any time. But you ain't leaving that camp. You're not going to go and rape anybody. You're not going to go and work for Deliveroo. You're not going to be working in a car wash or anything like that. This is how it's going to work. You could build those prison camps. You could have enough to fit 100,000 people in a couple of months, no problem.
Yeah, we did it with the Nightingale hospitals.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Where there's a will.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask the Americans. They built that one. They built that one for ICE. You know, the people who were deported by ICE. It won't be a nice place to live, but I tell you what, you could stop those boats in 2 weeks.
Of course you can, and this is the thing, there's no deterrent. We're giving them everything. Well, our government's giving them everything. You know, it's like a holiday for them, only they get to walk around our cities and do damage to people. You know, it's gone above where we thought we would be. You know, everyone, political commentators said, you thought it would be bad. I mean, even those people are now saying it is catastrophic. We never thought it could be this bad.
It's so, I mean, it's genuine. It's laughable now. Can I ask you, you say you're supporting reform. How do you feel about this idea, this, you know, they get reform, the Tories say they're both fighting to win, etc. So are Labour, you know, Greens, whatever the next election. But they're likely the possibility of, and it's not progressive, but they call it a progressive alliance between Labour, the Greens, maybe the Lib Dems too. But whether or not in that scenario, Zia Youssef said there would be a patriotic duty for the Tories and the Conservatives to form an alliance, to form a coalition. Would you support that?
I think so. Well, I don't think we have much choice, Julie, to be honest, because what are the alternatives? The Greens and Labour? I mean, then we would be in a third world country.
Oh, yeah. Third world country, we'd be back in caves if it was up to the Greens. Although one of the topics we're going to talk about in this next half hour, we'll be back in caves sooner under Ed Miliband. Great call, Carl. As always, great to hear from you. 12:33 is the time. Quick word from Benedict.
Just as always, the thing, was it Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil? One of their great ideas was that we were going to have communal vacuum cleaners. Every street would have one vacuum cleaner, and you'd have to sign up to what day you were going to use it. That was a genuine policy.
Sorry.
That's how we're going to save the planet, folks. You get to share a vacuum. Little Henry Hoover.
It's not possible to explain how bat beep crazy the Greens are, but also, crucially, how dangerous they are, how incredibly authoritarian and scary they are.
The reason Europe is hooked on Russian gas is, at least in no small part, because German Greens, backed by Rosneft or whichever one it was, funded by them, decided we're going to knock down the nuclear power stations in Germany, and that is a good thing.
They are,
they
are literally doing the work of Putin
insane.
and Xi Jinping. They are absolutely, they're genuine. I mean, and if I see one more interview where the leader, Zach Polanski, is treated as if he's like sort of just Mr. Nice little bloke who's come from the student union, he is neither nice nor he's stupid and dangerous. These are very, very bad combinations in people who want to lead the country. 12:34 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Ralph Schulhammer, your favourite of mine, about the latest mad net zero targets. But also, basically, it's a choice between blackouts or the net zero targets. I've got to be honest with you, I'm going to go for the blackouts because I think we may as well get there quicker and know where we are. But up next, we are going to talk about online safety and also gender guidance in schools. That was announced last week. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, sorry, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about a couple of the biggest stories in the news. One was announced last week in terms of the gender guidance for schools. I mean, you know, boys are boys and girls would be my gender guidance, but there we are. Plus the online safety issue and the latest, I think it's every Monday now, there's another announcement about some sort of online social media ban or the likes for under 16s. Let's talk about both with Mark Lehane. He's executive head at Wooden Academy Trust. He's also a former special advisor under 3 Conservative education secretaries. Good afternoon to you, Mark.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. Let's talk first of all about the social media ban, because that's been a big issue in the news this morning. And again, the latest talk, and we've had Liz Kendall doing the rounds, emoting a lot. She likes to emote about, you know, the worries about children and what they're seeing on social media and the algorithms that are directing them to things, and bereaved parents of youngsters who've, you know, been sent down horrible rabbit holes. Do you think we need to have a ban on mobile phones for under 16s, a ban on social media, stricter rules for the algorithms of these social media companies, or is this about parenting?
Well, the most important people to make sure that kids are safe are their parents, and it's not that difficult to lock a child's phone down so they can't add these apps, so they can't access these websites. I've got 4 kids of my own. Haven't made the mistakes with the older 2. The younger 2 have got a lot less access to their phone and they can't access these apps. So I think as parents, we cannot pass on the responsibility to other people. That said, this is a big coordination problem. One of the biggest reasons why kids feel pressure to get a smartphone, get the apps, is because all their other mates are on there. And there is huge amounts of evidence now that these social media apps are designed to be addictive. Yep. That they're not just helpful, useful things. They are deliberately designed to be addictive. And therefore, I've over time shifted away from saying, look, it's just down to parents being parents, to saying we probably need to treat social media the way we treat all other addictive things and not let younger kids get access to them. Well, the devil is going to be in the detail, though. The key thing is, how are they going to stop it?
Well, this is it. And my worry is, again, because I didn't have an issue. I've only got the one, but she's grown up now. But we didn't have issues in that area. But I certainly know other parents who've had massive issues, and got Benedict Spence in the studio with me. But he's not, you know, not a parent. And again, so easy to say, oh, well, you don't give them a phone. You don't. Well, easy to say, but when yours is the only kid that doesn't get invited to any parties because all the invites are on the phones, that's a pretty hard thing to do. But we all know that. There are lots of parents who, frankly, they're the worst offenders themselves. They sit on their phones all the time. They use phones and tech as a babysitter. Those kids are still going to, if it's parental responsibility, are still going to suffer. Those are probably the kids who most need to have that. But how do we deal with that aspect of it?
Well, and that's why, like other addictive things, be it booze, fags, or whatever, we probably do need the government to step in and legislate on it and enforce the legislation. So just as, you know, shops can't be selling kids booze and fags, and if they do, we've got enforcement officers that go and check up on that. Yeah. We need the same on social media. But the difficulty for me, and maybe it's because I don't understand the tech enough, how are they going to stop kids accessing it without it becoming a free speech thing and stopping grown-ups who are entitled to do whatever they want to do?
This is exactly my issue, which is that by definition, if someone's got to identify themselves as a child, then someone has to identify themselves as an adult. And how do you do that other than giving your ID? And again, after what's happened in lockdown, what's happened in terms of, you know, stifling people's access to information, that really, really worries me. And I don't trust the social media companies to make those decisions about what is and what is not safe. And I definitely don't trust the government of any hue, including ones you worked under, to decide that. But I'm also not sure, given the evidence of what we see with a lot of parents now, kids turning up to school, they can barely sit upright, they can't speak properly, they're on mobile phones, but they don't know how they don't know how to go to the toilet or dress themselves. There are clearly a heck of a lot of parents who ain't doing their job properly anymore.
No, and I think, you know, one thing that is constant throughout civilization, whether you look back at the ancient Greeks or more recently, people do bemoan the youngsters of the day and whatever they're getting up to, and the parents as well.
They're watching Elvis Presley. How disgusting.
In fact, but I think that the key thing is, whenever a new thing comes along, first of all, we get all excited about it. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And then we realise what the downsides are. And then we go through this painful process of trying to work out how we keep the bad things at bay and try and make the best of the good stuff. Now, with social media, it is ubiquitous. That's what makes it so different. And it is so darn destructive and addictive. So we've got to get our head around how we do it. So I'm happy that the government are looking at it, but the devil is going to be in the detail. And this is what it's going to come down to. The electorate as a whole, making sure that the government doesn't over-regulate, doesn't give Ofcom or others too much power, and also doesn't get in the way of parents doing what they need to as well. It's not either or, it's and. Well,
that's the interesting thing. I mean, again, the Online Safety Act came in, under the Conservatives, and this is about updating things and trying to keep up with the AI and things like that, which again can definitely be a great help, but also a great worry for youngsters. But again, Ofcom, again, unelected, appointed body, totally and utterly, unaccountable to the general public, having a say over whether or not social media could be banned. There was talk about banning X, Elon Musk says, because of Grok undressing, putting pictures out of women. I mean, it happened to me. You put a picture out yourself in a nice dress, and then someone puts you in a bikini, and it shouldn't be happening. But again, do I want unelected, unaccountable people wearing their big jewellery in Ofcom deciding whether or not I can go on X or not? No, I don't.
And actually, as putting my parent hat on or my head teacher hat on, I don't want Ofcom making those decisions either. What I do want is parents stepping up and doing what they need to do, schools doing what they need to do, because schools do have responsibility, because we look after the kids for a huge chunk of their waking hours, so we need to do our bit. Ideally, parents and schools need to work together. And actually, when you talk to parents, I mean, I've got a really strict phone ban at my school, and we're going to go even harder next year.
I mean, again, any school that doesn't have that is frankly not doing its job properly, as far as I'm concerned.
You're right, but there are phone bans and there are phone bans. Where we've made ourselves a bit unpopular with some this year is now if we catch a kid with their phone a second time, we literally confiscate it for a whole week, and we've got some kids where we've taken it for half a term.
I love it. I hate to tell you, but if their kid was an illegal migrant's kid, they'd be entitled to compensation now.
Well, what a lot of people don't realise, as a quick aside, what a lot of people don't realise is schools have legal indemnity. If you confiscate something from a child, something happens to that, the parents or the child have no contact.
Oh, I love it.
It's been tested in all over the years. But the key thing is that we know lots of kids are showing addictive behaviour.
Yep.
We know lots of kids where we see mental health problems they're struggling with. A lot of it comes from being on the phone all the time and lack of sleep. So it's one of these things which has brilliant upsides, but it's got massive downsides.
And again,
to control it is good.
It's not just what the kids are doing online or what they're seeing online, it's what they're not doing. They're not having conversations face to face, they're not playing sport, they're not, just having fun. The normal interactions that we all had when we were younger, they're missing out on those. I see groups of kids and they're literally all looking down at their phones. It breaks my heart, it does. They're just missing out on life.
One of the loveliest things that teachers will say when schools have brought in a phone ban is actually how they see kids rediscovering the art of conversation, mucking about, gossiping, playing sport, whatever it is.
Books, exactly. Let's also talk about something else, talk about school responsibility. This was the new government guidance issued last week. I was absolutely gutted I wasn't on air on Friday to discuss it, but we finally got legally binding advice for schools. It was a little bit confusing. Parents should be involved in the vast majority of cases where a child questions their gender, according to the guidance. Toilets are for boys or for girls, that is the law, but the guidance got the backing of the author of that landmark Cass review into puberty blockers in children at the Tavistock. That's Dr. Hilary Cass. She said it's a huge step in the right direction. But basically, it's still allowed for the idea that schools, they shouldn't initiate steps towards social transitioning, allowing a child to change their name and to change their pronouns at school. But they should consider carefully what other support a child might need. But it didn't rule it out. I think it should have gone further and ruled it out completely, personally, and that parents should always be informed. But what do you make of it?
Well, I've been watching this particularly closely because I was actually the special advisor in the Department for Education that persuaded Nadeem Zahawi, when he was Education Secretary, that we needed this guidance. I was talking to colleagues out in schools a few years ago, and they were saying, we do not know where we stand. We're caught between activist organisations, parents, children and teachers, and they needed some guidance. So I'm really glad it's come out. Now, it was virtually ready to go when the general election was called back in 2024, but there are a couple of things that needed pinning down that weren't quite ready. And so it's fair enough that a new government would want to come in and review it before they put it out and not just rely on what the previous people did. So when I looked at it, and I have taken time to work through it now, the good stuff is it's going into the statutory safeguarding guidance, which every school in the land has to follow. So that's a good thing. The downside is, because it's focused overwhelmingly on safeguarding, it's overlooked a bunch of other things that are equally important. For instance, when it talks about school sports, it makes it really clear that, you know, you have to make sure that sport is safe. It doesn't now mention the fact that sport also needs to be fair as well. You might say it's safe for a boy to play netball with girls, but that doesn't necessarily make it fair, given the physical advantages that boys might have. The other downside, I think, compared to the draft that we left behind at the general election, was it made it very, very clear that children should rarely, if ever, socially transition in a primary school. They're just too young. And it also made it clear that you should rarely, if ever, basically never, do this without involving the parents. Indeed, the only time you shouldn't involve parents with a child's decision at school, in fact, anything to do with a child at school, is if they're at the immediate risk of serious harm. And I think the wording in this latest version is a little bit softer. And my worry is it leaves open a space for bad actors or activist schools to do things.
And we know there are activist teachers, and they're being advised by activist groups, the Stonewalls and the like. Mark Lehane, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much for your very considered views on all of that. Former special advisor under Conservative Education Secretaries, but also now an executive head teacher at Wootton Academy Trust. Oh yeah, and a father of 4 as well, which I think also is relevant. Benedict Spence, you are none of those things, and I am none of those things. What do you make particularly of the gender guidance? Because when I saw it last week, I thought, oh, it should be really clear. You're a boy or you're a girl. You can't change genders. We don't lie to kids. End of. Nothing to discuss. You're a boy, you use the boys' toilets. Girls, you've got nothing to discuss.
One of the first times that the Supreme Court was actually of any use was when it kind of came out and said, well, yeah, this is kind of how reality works. But we still don't seem to have quite got over that. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but it's one of those things where people on the left seem to be absolutely determined that the entirety of society should be bound up in all sorts of legalese to stop anybody from doing anything until it's something that they actually would like to happen, and it's, you know, it's inconvenient for them. That's the sort of situation that we're headed for. And, you know, the suggestion about activist teachers in schools, it's a very real thing. And I'm sorry, it's very dangerous, actually, that this is still allowed to proliferate. They need as firm a hand as the children need, frankly, in being told what they can and cannot get away with.
And they need to stop employing these very, very questionable trans activist organisations to come in and talk to them. It even happened at my own daughter's school, and these organisations are seriously dodgy. Simple as that. 12:47 is the time. Talk about really dodgy. Net zero policy. Apparently, we're facing either hitting net zero targets or blackouts. I wonder which Ed Miliband will choose. We'll talk to Ralph Scholhammer about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 12:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about net zero. I love talking about net zero. I will love talking about it until the day we finally drop net zero. Well, we ain't doing it anytime soon under either Keir Starmer or his basically we'll destroy the country and put everyone back in caves before we're done secretary, and that is of course Ed Miliband. Not his formal title, but it's what his title should be. But he's been told by industry experts that he faces a choice between imposing power blackouts on a nation or missing his target to hit net zero electricity supplies by 2030. Well, let's talk about this with Ralph Scholhammer. He's a political theorist and professor at Webster University in Vienna and a voice of sanity and reason on this issue. Good afternoon to you, Ralph.
Good afternoon, Julia. Great to be back.
Great to be back. I haven't seen you for a while. I think you've been off busy gallivanting. We haven't been able to get you on. You and I have talked about this many times in the past, and it's very, very clear. You can either have reliable, cheap, affordable energy and not have blackouts, or you can hit your net zero targets, but you can't do both. Which do you think Ed Miliband would choose?
Well, I mean, there's a certain bittersweetness of being right if the consequences of being right are so dark, quite metaphorically and potentially literally. No, I mean, I mean, and I said this now for years. I think Ed Miliband is the worst person to be in such a position. I would use somewhat starker language, but I don't mean to offend your viewers. I mean, I think that they probably remember at a competing channel, he once gave an interview, I think a year ago, where he claimed that taxes have no impact on prices.
Yes.
So these are people that, I'm so sorry to say, that they don't know what they're doing. But I have also to be a little bit upset with the leaders of industry, because it's the same in Germany. They should have known. I mean, industry should have known 10 years ago that net zero is unsustainable and bad for industry. So I'm glad they're coming out now.
No, they did. The car makers, the industrialists, all of the power people, they all knew. But the thing is, to say this isn't a good idea, you were called climate denier and you lost your job, because it's been that bad, certainly in this country, and I imagine in Germany too, which has gone completely insane and has only in the last year or two kind of rolled some of that back. But this is the thing, anyone questioning it, you and me and others, we were called climate deniers, evil, awful people who wanted the end of the planet, and people weren't listening. But we've always said, none of these policies survive any contact with reality. Well, reality is hit. But let's go through the actual issue here, because he's been warned he's going to have to choose between power blackouts and missing his target to hit net zero. And again, I think it's 95% electricity supplies being net zero by 2030, because he realised, it's equally unachievable as 100%. But they say there's such a backlog of routine maintenance on the electricity network, they can't maintain the grid's resilience and at the same time spend what is going to be billions upgrading it to handle new wind and solar farms, and of course significant delays in actually building our nuclear power stations, which are supposed to be there to give us reliability and backup. So the reality is, if they keep on this route, we are going to basically have times when our electricity and our power go off, aren't we?
Yeah, and we had the example in Spain over the summer, right? Yeah. And Spain is at least giving their geographical position much better suited for solar energy. The point is, once you hit 50% of your supply with renewables, particularly wind and solar, not counting hydro, your grid comes under massive stress. So every single pound you would spend on renewable production, you would also have to spend on grid investments, but that's not happening. So these blackouts, by the way, again, this is not just a UK problem. Yeah. If you look at a radiation map, how the sun hits the earth, so to speak, Northern Europe, or Europe in general, is like the least ideal place in the world to do solar. I mean, let's be completely honest. I love the United Kingdom. I love the British Isles. But nobody says, let's go to Britain. It's all those sunny days over there.
I'm looking out the window right now. Yeah, to be fair, do they say that about Austria?
No, it's the same here. I mean, my favorite example is always northern Denmark and in Norway, where you literally have entire month without any sun, and you build solar panels there. Listen, if you have a beautiful estate in the countryside and you want to put a few solar panels on your roof, be my guest. That's fine by me. If you are a prepper and you want to be isolated and independent from the grid as much as possible, fantastic. I'm all for it. But to say you want to raise your entire economy on it, your entire industry in it, that's just not going to work. Yeah. Unfortunately, apparently we are running the experiment.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it is an experiment, and it's all totally unachievable. And anyone who's been paying attention has said, A, it's unachievable, and B, it'll be at massive cost financially and to our sustainability. But at the same time, they're having conversations about this, such as they are. At the same time, we're talking about we need to spend more money on defence and we need to have a stronger economy. But there's never been an example of any country with high energy costs that has a booming economy. You can't make any of the items, the military items that you need to have a stronger defence if you haven't got affordable energy and the ability to cast steel and things like that. So we've almost got two or three policies that are directly in contradiction of each other.
Well, it depends how I look at it. I mean, I tend to say that what transgenderism is in education is, net zero to the economy. It's a separate reality that has nothing to do with reality. And the problem is a significant number of Western politicians have decided to live in a world that is entirely detached from reality. That is a condition you can maintain temporarily, but not permanently. And I'm afraid that, sooner or later, reality will reassert itself. Yeah. And the longer you try to live in non-reality, the more difficult and the more painful return to reality will be. And just as a quick add-on, the price for this return to sense and reality is not going to be paid by the Ed Miliband's. It's going to be paid once again by the British working class.
And it's certainly not going to be paid by all the green companies who are currently taking a load of subsidies to produce energy we don't need or not produce energy. It's the fact that we pay wind farms not to produce energy. It blows my mind. And we've got this mentioned. There's a £24 million taxpayer-funded net zero system at one of the UK's busiest ports, the Sea Change project in Portsmouth, completed last year to enable ships to switch off their engines, plug into the electricity grid when berthed, cuts emissions, boost air quality. What's not to like? It's never been used because it's too expensive to be run. You couldn't make this stuff up. We've also got Keir Starmer. He's drawing up plans under which he desperately wants to get us back in the EU. And he's drawing up plans under which basically we will cede all control over our energy policy as part of a sort of a closer realignment with Brussels. And we will basically ramp up our net zero targets at the same time. So less control, giving into the utter madness of what's going on in Brussels as well. I mean, just as at a time when quite a lot of countries in Europe, like Germany, are going, think we've made a horrible mistake here.
Well, I'm not sure that they do. I mean, one thing, and this is very important for me to say, because that's a general phenomenon. For many years, we believed, at least I did, Julia, I don't know about yourself, that all these crazy ideas, they're limited to academia, they're limited to the universities, they will never penetrate the broader policy debates. And here we are. This was the mistake of conservative or right-wing movements for basically 30 years, that every crazy idea that gained steam, we said, don't worry about it. Once these people get into office, once these people get into industry, in the private sector, they will give up on it. They will immediately realize the wrongness of their ways and so on and so on. Nope, they did not. They rather bend reality to their will than bend their will to reality. And we're all going to have to pay the price.
Yeah, and the reality of sitting in the dark and the cold is going to come to us. Ralph Schollerhammer, thank you very much. You've been a voice of reason on this for so long. Appreciate that. Benedict Spence, we've been saying this for years. It's all madness. I've been called a climate denier among the many things I'm called.
But I'm not opposed to the idea of living in the dark and the cold. I'm from Norfolk. This is how I grew up, and frankly, it appeals to me in this life without a phone, which I think all of you should ascribe to as well.
Keeps trying to throw away our phones.
Nothing to do with saving the planet.
The whole way through the show, it keeps going. No, but the thing is, people laugh about this. But you know what? The heating goes off, the lights go off. People die.
Oh, of course they do. And this is the reality of. I joke about this, but it is the reality of the situation that we face. And it's just the obstinacy about it all. Not even there isn't even an emergency backup plan for just in case the wind doesn't blow. What do we do in that situation?
Ed Miliband is either lying to us and knows, or he is as insane as we think he might actually be. Both of these options are bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's
an
an
option.
No, here's an option that is very, very good there. Mr. Peter Carball's in for Ian Collins. I assume he's off on half term.
I assume so, yes.
I no longer have a child at school, so half term is not a thing to me anymore.
It's not a thing, doesn't exist. Yes.
Gets in.
Children are always off, though, aren't they?
I mean, they barely go to school these days.
Yes, indeed. You're talking about a great option. Obviously, our next Prime Minister